I'll go ahead and make I move that we move items 7.1 and 6.5 to be the first items on the list. We have some guests here tonight.
Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we'll move right into 7.1 then, which is our English Language Arts grades 6 through 8 tonight.
Excellent.
Some esteemed guests here.
So the microphone doesn't necessarily amplify you in this room, but it helps the live streaming to pick you up. So talking into it is still important.
All right, hello. We are here for the middle school ELA department. If you go to the next slide.
I'm Renee Swordstrom. I'm the 6th grade team lead. I also was just hosting a student teacher. She just finished right before spring break, and it is my 4th grade district.
I am Susanna Zableski. I'm the ELA PLC leader. I am one of the head coaches for the varsity girls swim team. I'm the middle school girls track coach, the middle school battle of the books advisor, and this is my 4th year in the school district.
I'm Nico Brando. I teach 8th grade ELA. This is my 3rd year in the district, and I supervise a creative writing contest for the 8th graders.
I love that you included your other involvement. So good work. Love it.
All right, so some of the curriculum work we have been doing as an ELA PLC, our base curriculum is My Perspectives. And to supplement this resource, we have added novel units, extended mini units on poetry and figurative language, more explicit grammar and vocabulary instruction, research and passion projects, and have offered reteaching during target time. Some of these discussions have, with our high school during the vertical alignment, have shown us the need for some of those supplemental things. In our school improvement guide that we have been working on with the Guiding Coalition at our middle school, in the past 2 years, we have fully completed anchor statements 2 and 3, and this includes unwrapped guarantees, proficiency rubrics, unit plans, pacing guides, and assessment plans. That was a good big celebration for us this year. So some celebrations this year in our winter iReady scores, we had 94% annual typical growth for our students 6th through 8th grade, which is just absolutely incredible. We were so proud of our kids. They did everything that they could do on it and really showed us the skills they had. Some of the big ideas of our department this year, we created some school-wide writing types and graphic organizers with the help of Nicole Sullivan last year that we have shared with the other departments in the school. So social studies, science especially, to be using those argumentative and informative graphic organizers when they're teaching those types of writing to their students, to just have some more cohesive understanding of what writing should look like at the middle school level. And some of our specialist teachers have started to use those in their classes as well, like in Tech Ed and FACE. We've been offering some extension opportunities during target time. Something that we've noticed at the middle school is just more of a need for extension for our students who are at and above grade level. And since we don't have a TAG coordinator at the middle school, we've kind of made that a bit of our pet project this year to expand those opportunities. So I had a couple of those extension target times where we did some in-depth novel analysis with students. And currently, Jen Ashburn, our FACE teacher, has that extension target time where she's been doing some project-based learning with students to do some budgeting, recipes, like making tutorials and stuff. We have made sure to have an in-depth novel unit in each grade level, which we'll get into a little bit more in the further slides. This was something that we addressed with our vertical alignment with the high school as well, of just more need to read those longer texts and get into them more to teach students that analysis and those critical thinking skills.
So each grade level has some different guarantees, and they mostly follow their way all the way up through the grade levels. For 6th grade, we kind of have it split into 4 different sections. So we have reading, writing, language, that's our grammar type stuff, and then our speaking and listening. So we have citing text evidence, can they look into a text, tell me what it's saying, and make logical connections between that. Theme and central ideas, 6th grade's really just kind of like an intro into that. So teaching can we find the moral of a story? Could you say why you think that might be the moral of a story? Figurative language, we're just looking at similes, metaphors, figuring out, hey, if they say it in this way, does it change the meaning a little bit? You know, that kind of thing. Writing, so the writing process, that's just like the broad overview of all writing. Just making sure, can we create organized writing? Can we use appropriate transitions and connect ideas? And do we have a good grasp of academic and domain vocabulary when we're writing? We also focus specifically in on argumentative writing. And this is just, can you write a claim and can you solidly back that up with quality evidence? Language, we mostly look into vocabulary and can you look at a word that you might not know and figure out what it means by the words around it? And then finally, speaking and listening, this is when we might look at different types of media, so a video and a book maybe, and compare how their impacts might be different. So current work, we just finished My Side of the Mountain. It's a really popular book within the students. They like reading about all the nature and wildlife and kind of that adventure. We looked into those themes of adventure and independence throughout that story. Right now we started our modern technology unit. We just read a science fiction story today about what school could look like in the future, and are we all gonna have robot teachers, you know, that don't have any emotions, that kind of thing. And so throughout this whole entire unit, they basically try to assert whether modern technology is good or bad in the world, and they have to try to back it up in different ways. And then what we're looking forward to is we end with our imagination unit, which we get to do fictional writing, which students really love. They get to come up with their crazy imaginative characters and new worlds. And then at the end of the year, we do a research project where they get to choose whatever they are interested in, and that will be their passion project. So we've had everything from their favorite sports teams to how to create different types of art projects, whatever it might be. It's a really awesome in-depth project, though.
All right, so 7th grade, I'm not going to read all of the guarantees to you. It's just the language from our standards. So we have our reading and the language on those slides. And on the next slide is the writing and speaking and listening standards. It was important to us when we were identifying our guarantees to, one, use the heat maps from the Wisconsin Forward to see what is being hit, to talk with the high school to see what gaps they are noticing in students of like needs that are maybe have not been met that they need to have more attention put to. And also just thinking beyond school, like what skills we want our students to be taking away from middle school. So the essential questions from our units in 7th grade, our first unit is about generations. Our essential question is, what can one generation learn from another? And that we read a lot of like nonfiction and some fiction texts about those generations, about like what we can learn from those who are older and younger than us. A Starry Home is a very like science fiction heavy unit, which is a fun one for students. Should we make a home in space is that guiding question. The Outsiders is our novel unit. So how does group membership affect a person's identity in life? People on the Planet, what effects do people have on the environment? And Facing Adversity, how do we overcome obstacles? So a little bit more about our novel unit in 7th grade. I've done this since my first year in the district, and it has always been definitely a highlight of the year for our students. So students discovered the world of the Greasers and the Socias through our December novel unit. They expanded their knowledge on how group membership experiences and stereotypes affect our perspectives, identities, and everyday life. Students were able to track and analyze character and theme development and take part in a Socratic seminar, which is just an opportunity where students get to kind of teach each other, and we learn how differently people view the same content, and kids get to really know new perspectives there. In a project, students delve deeper into character from the novel. They analyze the nuances, faults, perspectives, and growth in their character. If you go to the next slide, I have a few pictures of student work from that this year. So those were some of the posters. I know it's kind of hard to see the writing on the outside, but there's different parts where they go into some of those details of the character, and they do a really nice job with this project every year.
So similar with 6th grade and 7th grade, we follow a lot of the same standards. Biggest thing is we're increasing the rigor to get them to an 8th grade level, and now that we're at the end of the year, we're getting them prepared to reach 9th grade level. And we spend a lot of time citing evidence especially, and working on learning unfamiliar words and using word parts like suffixes and prefixes to figure out the meaning of words that they may not be familiar with. And then if you can go to the next slide. So with 8th grade, we have at least 5 units that we go through. The first one is rites of passage. The essential question is, what are some milestones on the path to growing up? We talk about various experiences that a student or someone may face in order to reach adulthood. Our second unit is called What Matters, and we talk about when it's right to take a stand. Our novel unit is Farewell to Manzanar. The essential question is, why is it crucial to learn about others? The Holocaust, which is the unit that we're currently on, focuses on ways that we can remember the past. And then the next unit that we are getting into is on human intelligence, thinking about different ways that people can show their intelligence. So the novel unit that we just wrapped up, again, is Farewell to Manzanar. In the novel unit, students analyze characters, new vocabulary, and specific events with a huge deep dive into how specific events and dialogue helps us learn about characters and how things change over time. And then if you go on the next slide, please. We are currently on the Holocaust unit, really focusing on the Diary of Anne Frank. Students actually just completed reading a play out loud altogether based off of Anne Frank's diary. And then moving forward, students are starting a creative writing contest, which we actually started today. I'll talk more about that in a moment. And then afterwards, we'll be focusing on our human intelligence unit. So the creative writing contest is held in March and April of every year. This is very specific to only students in Jackson County. So Black Bear Falls and Melrose are competing against each other, specifically 8th grade students. They're going to be submitting a creative writing essay, which they are writing only in 8th grade ELA. We can have 3 total winners. First and second place can get $50. They can get a journal, a pen, they get their picture taken for a local newspaper, and they have the opportunity for their work to be published. Same thing goes for third place, only difference is they get $20. And this is a picture of our last year's winners. We ended up having 2 winners from this school district here, which is really phenomenal. Yeah.
If I could, just while you're talking about that, first of all, it's the Tuesday Club, which meets on Wednesdays. It wasn't
Of
clear.
course.
Tuesday Club meets on Wednesdays, and they've been sponsoring this writing competition for many years. And I just want to give a shout out that we had 2 winners last year. It was not that many years ago that some members of the Tuesday Club came to us and were disappointed in the entries that they have gotten from our middle school, and they debated whether they should continue offering the competition. And instead of them deciding that, the middle school ELA staff said, we got this, we're going to beef up our instruction around this, and we're going to not make it an optional thing that they could choose to do, but embed it into one of your writing prompts as a class. And so that is a perfect example of good work for kids to do, and the community connection piece is huge, because the ladies that were part of the Tuesday Club were super proud that there was 2 Black Bear Falls such fine entries. So good work on Wednesday, Tuesday Club.
All right, and so Battle of the Books took place just this last month. So on Friday, February 21st, the middle school Tigers competed in the school-wide Battle of the Books competition. It's been a few years that we've had it at the middle school. So I worked with Christy from Red Creek this year to get that back at the middle school. It was something I did as a student and loved. We had 4 teams, and they had a list of 20 books that they have spent this school year reading and preparing. I have some pictures of the teams there, so you can see our smiling faces over at the middle school. And each team faced off head-to-head. Our 8th grade team ended up winning and went on to compete at the state level on February 27th. They ended up placing 38th out of 162 teams in the state. They tied with several other schools, so they ended up actually having the 18th highest score in the state, which was a good pat on the back for our district, I thought. It was very exciting.
Agreed.
And some next steps for the department. We are continuing with that school improvement guide. We have some anchor statements we are going to continue to address this year and into next year. With our vertical alignment conversation with the high school, we noticed the secondary need for more direct instruction in vocabulary and grammar, and have started to instill that more into our practices, and to see where we have already been doing it, and to just kind of beef that up a little bit more. Making sure our rigorous common formative and common summative assessments, they're meeting that DOK of the standard, and our formatives and summatives are matching in their rigor so students are prepared properly for summative assessments. Something we want to look into in the future is potential PD opportunities on extension to expand those tag services at the middle school. Again, that's something we've really been working for this year. I think that's the last one.
Just so everyone is clear, TAG is talented and gifted. We monitor student data points, and there's not like this formal enrollment into TAG. We monitor kids that are at the 97th, 98th percentile and above over multiple testing opportunities. We follow them throughout the years and make sure when it comes time for target times and all that stuff that they're guided towards more challenging content and curriculum. So there's not like a you're in the TAG program or you're not. It's we monitor your math and your ELA scores. When you consistently score in the 97, 98th percentile, then we try to program you appropriately.
And we have an exceptionally talented group of kids at the middle school right now. So we have a lot of kids that are really hungering for that push and hungering for those challenges, which is great to see their like thirst for knowledge and learning, but working to provide more for them.
Does the board have any questions for the middle school ELA?
Yeah, so Battle of the Books, can you explain, so 20 books, I get that part.
Mm-hmm.
So you're like, they're answering trivia questions about these books?
Yeah.
What's the structure of the actual competition?
So it's up to each school that competes how they kind of run their school competition. And each school is allowed to send one team to the state competition, which is online. I think another maybe step back after COVID of things going online and maybe never coming back. But so the way we structured it is we had like a face-off round where they had 10 questions per round, and they were asked questions like, in which book does a character tell her mother that hunger is just another struggle in life, or something like that, and they have to remember those very like small, minute details from the books that they read. Our 8th grade team was like really blew it out of the water. I think in all of their rounds, they answered at least 9 of the 10 questions correctly. And we used buzzers to kind of like they do for Quiz Bowl, and yeah.
Is that similar to how the state competition is set up then, or?
The state competition they do online completely, so they get to discuss the questions a little bit more, and they're much harder questions than the questions we're given for the school level. And from looking at the scores from the state, it sounds like the middle school questions were maybe the hardest of the 3 levels this year. Because if you get a score of 300 above, you are part of the honor club, and for the middle school level, I think only 4 teams achieved that this year, versus the elementary and high school levels had at least like 10, 15 teams that got that score. So it was a really difficult state competition this year for middle school.
Any other questions?
Sure, this is softball, but I asked this last time, I'm gonna ask it again. If you had a magic wand,
Okay.
and there is no reality, and there's no budget limit, and every single person in the community was on your side and wanted exactly what you want, what would make your job more effective or easier or help you do your job best? What resources would you like in a magical fairy tale ideal world?
I don't know if this is the full answer to that question, but I think having more access to some of those, like some novels, nonfiction texts that students may not have had access to in the past would be amazing, to like let them hear voices of authors that like are from a different country, have a different history than they do. It's so valuable for students, and so many of our standards are addressing those skills of being able to identify how somebody's background, how somebody's experiences affect the way they view the world. And I think when students only see people like themselves in their writing, they can't really grasp a full picture of that, how people from different perspectives, how people from different backgrounds view the world and how that affects them. But I would love to be able to, you know, give students unlimited resources to novels and find the perfect book for every student in the school and have that time to be able to do that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Anything else? Yep. Next, we're going to move to the Great Rivers United Way.
Thanks so much for coming, you guys.
Thank
Well
you
done.
very much.
So next up, we have some friends from the Great Rivers United Way. The district has a relationship with the La Crosse United Way through our community health workers and the programming and training and all of that work that goes into our community health workers. The United Way, of course, has been around much longer than our relationship with them, and they are now officially established in Jackson County, and they have done a couple of presentations to different employers, and so I agreed to give you guys this opportunity to hear from them. So, Tim and Jennifer, take it away.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having us here this evening, and an extra thank you for moving us up in the agenda as well. We certainly appreciate that. So thank you very much. If we can go on to the next slide here, and as Shelley talked about, you know, Great Rivers United Way is a little bit new to Black River Falls, and just a little bit of history here. The United Way is kind of a national brand. It's kind of like the Boys and Girls Club. It's a national brand, but each local chapter is really managed individually. It's managed local decisions and those type of things. And Great Rivers United Way came into Black River Falls here in 2023 with the community health workers. And it was Black River Falls was at that time kind of covered by the Clark County United Way. And they're run a little bit differently, didn't have the resources for the community health workers, so it was asked that if Great Rivers United Way could take over the Black River Falls area, which was in Clark County, is like, well, sure, absolutely. So that's kind of what brought us into this. We work in 7 counties, kind of in this western Wisconsin area, and are very excited to be here in the Black River Falls area. If we could just go on to the next slide here, and I'm going to go through some of these quickly, but we're already in Black River Falls, and you may have seen it. The Great Rivers Hub came in 2023, and then last year in 2024, we added a Born Learning Trail and Read to Success, and we'll talk about those a little bit. So if we could go on to the next one. I don't know how many of you have seen the Born Learning Trail. This was put in last year along the Foundation Trail. It was in partnership with the Rotary Club of Black River Falls, Jackson County Public Health, and Wisconsin Fit Families. And it's really an interactive trail along there, you know, for childhood learning. So if you haven't had a chance to see it, now that it's springtime, great time, take kids, grandkids, get out there. It's kind of a fun activity to really kind of help with, you know, connecting kids with learning opportunities along that trail, and certainly appreciate the local support because that's what makes that happen. Next slide here is our Read to Success program. Read to Success is designed with the educational needs of 3rd graders. It's currently in the 3rd grade here at the Black River Falls School District at Red Creek Elementary, in which we partner adult volunteers with young learners to kind of help them and help get improved reading scores is obviously the goal of that. So that's another program that is brought in 2024 that Great Rivers United Way is now offering in the Black River Falls area. And then our community health workers, and with that, I'm going to have Jennifer cover the next few slides to talk about community health workers.
Thank you. So at the Hub, we use an evidence-based model to improve the individuals that we work with by addressing their social determinants of health, their basic needs that aren't being met through community health workers helping each person. So what that does is it improves health results, which helps with their living skills, their like helping them with rent, like anything that they need. It is driven by the person that we're working with. It's not driven by the community health worker, which is really neat. So in 2023, we extended into Jackson County with United Way, partnering with the servant-led community. And actually, I was the first community health worker on board in Jackson County. So just kind of leading the way and paving it for others. So we contract with organizations that employ the community health workers. So we don't employ them. We work with different organizations throughout the county, and I'll get into that in a minute. But the positions are funded partially by reimbursements that are from grants that we distribute when the community health worker works with a participant to complete a pathway. So let's say housing is a real need here, right? We know that. We know it takes a while to get a person housed. And so the community health worker basically takes the participant's hand and works with them to try to get them housing. And then once that housing is established for 30 days, then the hub releases a payment to the CCA that we work with. So populations served in Jackson County are primarily young families, and also Jackson County Health and Human Services has a community health worker that works with health hazards and in the community, which is brand new and exciting to partner with them. So in 2024, we helped 167 individuals. So it's pretty remarkable for the number of community health workers that we have. So in 2024 also, participants successfully addressed 1,390 needs. So 25 people found employment, 24 families found housing. That's huge. 15 individuals found medical homes and were connected to PCPs, so which helps with a lot of social determinants of health and the physical health of people. So 24 families found food security. That means they had food without a community health worker's support for 30 days. And hopefully that continued. Like the goal is to teach people where to go to find the resources and then like back way. So we want to work ourselves out of a job, right? We want the people to be self-sustaining. So 8 individuals were connected to mental health care, which is also huge in our community, and 6 individuals helped with higher education. So higher education means a certificate. So like CDL or some kind of nursing or something with a certificate. So that's pretty big. And I'll hand it back over to Tim.
So basically, help support the Great Rivers United Way. And I don't know how many people are familiar with the Great Rivers Way and kind of the funding model, but we do what's called workplace campaigns. And it's where we don't twist arms. We just like to get the information out, make people aware of what's offered, and then we see if people would like to pledge to us. And the beauty of doing workplace campaigns is we work with employers and organizations who offer payroll deduction for people. I work with several other school districts, and what really makes payroll deduction work, I think, because I think about my own kids who are now at the point of raising families. They're raising their own kids, and they're at that point in life. And if I go to my kids and say, "Hey, there's this wonderful cause. Do you got $100?" and they'll look at me and go, "Dad, are you kidding me? I'm buying diapers, I'm buying formula, I'm buying all these things," and they go, "I don't got $100." I said, "Do you got $2? And they go, "Well, what do you need $2 for? I got $2. Well, $2 a week is $100. And that's where the beauty of payroll deduction allows people to donate at levels that they couldn't do otherwise by having to give a one-time donation. And so when we look at a workplace campaign, and if we go to the next slide, we really truly make it easy because we run it very locally. When people do it, it's on an online link, it's customized for each organization, and the options are only local options. So, in the case here, there'd be 2 options, which would either be Community Health Workers, Great Rivers Hub, or the Read to Success Early Childhood. So knowing that when people pledge in Black River Falls, that money stays to programming in Black River Falls. It doesn't go to Alaska, it doesn't go to Toma, it doesn't go to, it would stay right here in Black River Falls when we run those workplace campaigns. And we think that that's very important in the counties we work in, because people know, how it is. There's all that rivalry, and we've seen that before. And I think that's very important to people, as they want to know that. Our hope is to eventually, work with the school district to run a workplace campaign so that we can give the employees that opportunity to pledge to help support these programs. And like I said, we make it very simple and very easy. We run it for just a couple of weeks. It's not ongoing. And then at the end of that time, we just send an Excel spreadsheet, get it to the payroll department to start that payroll deduction. So we do try and make it very easy by having it all online. It's no paper forms. People who used to be familiar with United Way in the past, it was a nightmare. It was forms and triplicate and all this paper, and it's so much easier now. And that's coming from an old guy who technology and me are not on the best of friends, but it works, and it goes very well. So we're certainly excited to be here. And what questions do you have for us this evening?
Got a couple. So does group currently just cover 54615, or does it cover the entire county?
At this point, we are only covering Black River Falls. There is discussion about taking over the entire county. However, it's one of those, which comes first, the chicken or the egg. We don't have the funding and the support to cover the whole county right now. So we're really just covering and starting with the Black River Falls, because it's obviously the hub and the center of Jackson County. I always say my dream is to grow that out, but we're starting here because it is the center of it.
So does Clark cover the rest of it for the most part?
Theoretically, that would be yes. I don't want to speak of them, but they're a little different. They're a volunteer-led United Way, so their outreach is very minimalized.
Okay. And then you had said that they fund to the two different initiatives, but you guys also have open grants, and there's one open right now. Would the 54615 community members then be eligible to apply for those?
Certainly anyone can apply for those, absolutely. There's no reason they could not apply for them. We're not raising money currently for any grant cycles here because, we don't want to get too far out in front of ourselves. It's because we're just coming into this community. Those are great questions. We don't want to get too far out there. As I say, eventually, would it be great if we're doing grants within the entire Jackson County? I think that'd be outstanding and awesome. But we're going to need more workplace campaigns to do that. That's just kind of the reality of that. But would I love to do it? You bet. These are good questions.
Any other questions? All right.
I don't think the magic box question.
Well, it's a little more obvious.
Yeah.
Your organization than what you want. You have a magic unlimited funding source.
I was going to mention I served on the Holman School Board for 9 years, and certainly appreciate all that you do. And as I was sitting there listening to your question, I'm like, I wished I'd had that question when I was back on the Holman School Board, because that was an outstanding question. So I was mentally getting ready for that, but great question earlier too. So thank you.
Excellent. Our purpose was just to make the board aware before we roll anything out to staff and make that a completely optional possibility. So, any further questions?
Sure.
It wasn't a challenge. You can say
No. This is a nitty-gritty thing, but is there any at all, and I can't think of it, but I'm asking, potential negative downside for trying to roll this out? Has there ever been a situation where employees have been upset about the
The fact that
attempted
it's
rollout
completely
of something
optional,
like
I
this?
feel like people who aren't interested will say no thank you. That's my opinion, but I don't know that.
To be honest with you, just in full disclosure, the biggest question we get is, do things stay local? And that's where, in the case of this, we do put, very specific programs that people get to pick where they want the money to go to. When we run a workplace campaign, say in Monroe County, because we do have active grants we give out there, there's another one that basically goes to the community investment fund, which is that grant money. That is not currently one of the options that's available when we're running workplace campaigns. And in full disclosure, kind of like I said with the Boys and Girls Club, there's a national brand, but it's all decisions are local. We pay 1% for that national brand. So, that sometimes is a question that comes up too. Well, I want my money to stay locally. We do pay 1% for that national brand, but all decisions and everything's done locally. So, and any national brand has to pay. I don't know what the due structure is for those other ones, but I know with us it's 1%.
Thank you so much for taking the time to come, we appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for having us this evening. Enjoy the night.
All right, more on the subject of grants. We have Gibson Grants up next.
We received a $400 donation to go to the food service side of the Angel Funds from Valerie Williams from Compier Home. So we are appreciative of that generosity. And speaking of grants, it is the timeline that the Education Enrichment Fund and the Lenda Charitable Trust and the Black River Area Foundation. So when you were asking about local grants, we are incredibly lucky in Black River Falls to have those very well established philanthropic organizations who already provide so many opportunities for community grants. So the EEF just launched theirs, and all of those grants are just for School District of Black River Falls educators to apply for. So that group has done some amazing things for staff members. When they have a creative idea, they're very supportive. So those will be coming up soon.
Right. And then more talking about funding. Next, we've got the referendum information. So the board has expressed interest in learning about what a referendum would take and the timeline, and anything for us.
Yeah, did anyone have questions after reviewing the information? The DPI website really has an awful lot of the details spelled out for you. Perhaps the I don't know if disappointing piece in that was that our next opportunity would be November of 2026. That is unusual that there's not a spring election happening in spring of 2026 or fall of 2025. It's kind of a unique stretch there that there is not. Up until about 8 years ago, not even 8, by 5 years ago, school districts could do a special election if they wanted to, but that is no longer lawful. So that means November 2026 would be our first opportunity. And that means there's going to be a biennium budget that is passed well before that, and we've already balanced 2 budgets before we get to that cycle. So as per the conversation that we had last month, the administration prepared for you a proposal for the budget that would balance us at the most conservative predicted budget for the state. And Jill's going to share with you tonight some costing, what if special ed got reimbursed at a higher rate, what would that mean for us? And what if that Association for Equity and Funding, I hope you found some of that information interesting. I love the maps that they share so that you can, I shared them with you, right? Maps.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. I saw some blank faces. I'm like, I thought I sent them. They share some great information just for some comparative, but Jill's also going to share with you an estimate on what it would look like for our district if the AEF got their budget asks. And I think the timing of that is going to be really disappointing for us, but we can get into that when we get to budget. All of those will impact a referendum. If the state funding formula swings, that we get an extra $1 million to spend as part of our revenue limit as our regular budget, I don't think there's a need to talk about a referendum, right? And the whole idea of referendums are to fix a failing school funding system. If they make adjustments to the funding system, then there's less of a need for referendum. So I think it would be much appreciated throughout the state if the funding formula itself were addressed, as opposed to every district having to spend that time and resource, and just the uncertainty of, we're going to propose this budget, and if the referendum passes, then we're going to be able to do this, this, and this, right? There's lots of districts living in a weird limbo that wouldn't have to happen if the funding formula dramatically changed. So we will certainly keep our eye on that as well. But for referendum, we will be coming forward with you. I keep asking for what are the levers that would most dramatically impact student achievement, and how can we cost those out? And those are those items that we're creating that list for. So our intention was to first share with you the information about the referendum timeline, and then balance the preliminary budget for 25-26. Immediately follow up with, here's our wish list if some of these other alternatives come true in the biennium budget, and depending on what happens there, that list quickly becomes the referendum wish list. Does that make sense and kind of meet what you were asking of us?
Yes, that means that if something happens, like all the funding for BLAST disappears, we're not gonna be able to address that until 2026.
Not through a referendum. It's always possible. Well, I'm gonna take that back because after school programming,
Department of Education.
for BLAST, that is after school care and that could fall under the child care umbrella and that is a Fund 80, the community service levy, which this board votes on each year at the annual meeting. And so you would have the power in October of each of those years to increase the Fund 80 level levy locally that could fund after school programming. So we would have control over that piece.
Okay, that's the key.
Yeah.
That's what's floating in my brain.
Sure,
In
sure.
general.
In fact, when we get to the childcare conversation, which is next, we're gonna talk a little bit about that as well.
So just a question from me to like fellow board members, I mean, is there anybody that is like adversely opposed to getting stuff put together to do a referendum? Is there anybody that sits here today that has no interest in participating in something like that in the future? Just
I
because
think we
of
need to
the-
look at our population and the affordability of another referendum. We have a lot of elderly that live in our county, along with being a low income population. I do think we need to take that into consideration.
I agree wholeheartedly and would remind the board that one of the strategies that you've been employing for years with our debt repayment is that we use that defeasance, which means that we would be able, we have some spending room authority without the levy going up. So you've made that decision and saved, I think we're at $2.5 million in interest payments because you keep opting through the levy to keep it a little bit more stable as opposed to up and down each year, and so that gives us some spending authority. When we passed the referendum in 2014 for Red Creek, we made an estimate of what we thought that was gonna cost us, and then we kept it at that estimate, and then it went down and we kept it there. Then when we passed our second referendum, if you recall, the levy did not increase. We were able to do that second 25 million? 24?
22.
Gosh, I can't believe it's been that long, I can't remember. Over $20 million, we were able to spend that without the levy increasing at the time because of that defeasance strategy. So when we talk about a revenue limit override referendum to raise us up from being such a low spending district, there's a lot of room in there through that defeasance that would not increase costs directly. It would slow down our debt repayment. We would no longer be paying out so far into the future, which is absolutely still fiscally responsible, right? We've taken advantage of this opportunity while we've had it, but we don't have to keep it at that level. So I just want to be clear that when we talk about a referendum, it does not always mean increased taxes.
No, I'm not saying that. I just think it's something we need to consider as a board and as a community where we are at. So I'm not saying I'm opposed to it, but I do think it is something that we need to look at.
Jill, that's the one you and Matt came up with, the defeasance, right?
I'm sorry.
You and Matt did the defeasance when you first came on board, is that right?
Did you say Matt?
Maybe not, never mind. I'll ask later.
Brian? Are you
Brian.
talking about Brian
Yes,
Brewer
thank you.
from
Brian,
here?
yes. Yeah, with Brian,
Yes.
yeah, we met him at the.
Yes.
Okay, yep.
Yeah, that was a strategy we employed, years
And
ago.
do you see that, like, how far into the future can we expect that to, like?
So as long as we have any debt repayment, which each one of our referendums were 20 years?
Yes.
Right,
20-year
so
bonds.
20-year bonds for both of those referendums, the most recent one in 2020.
2020.
And so for 20 years, the district will be repaying that debt. From our 2014 referendum, so 2014 would be 2034. Because we use that defeasance strategy, we've paid off the interest from 34, 33, 32, right? So we're lessening the life of that loan. We were doing the same thing with the 2020, which could go to 2040. My prediction is we'll be done with all of that debt well before 2040. The amount of defeasance dollars we use is the decision you guys make each year before we go to that annual meeting. What do you want the levy to be? How, we've let it drop every year, but we haven't let it go all the way flat as low as it could go. So you make that decision, how much we're gonna use to pay off our debt early every year when you are passing the annual budget that goes to the annual meeting for the total electorate. So you get to control that each year.
So Casey, to answer your question, I'm game. Like let's do it. But I would say we should all get some training, like some really, we went to a couple seminar breakouts on it, and it was super helpful for me, I know, and I just think as a group to do that together would be really beneficial in kind of the planning process.
To understand the financial impact,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, and just even the PR piece.
The piece that I'm trying to point out and make clear to everybody is the amount of legwork behind the scenes that goes in for the administration in order to start to put ideas together for us. So I want to make sure that we're committed.
People are on board with the concept. If
Yeah,
we have
if
4 hard no's, there's no point in wasting our time.
Yeah, right.
And we're talking about 2026.
Right. So I think there's going to be a little bit of change in the board in the next couple of months, obviously. So, I mean, if there's the 5 of us that we know are still going to be sitting in these seats come next year, if we're all on board saying that, hey, this is something that we're passionate about and we're going to work towards, then that's important. If we have members that choose to not participate in working towards something like that, I'd like to know about it sooner than later so we don't waste a bunch of time trying to educate you on something that you don't want, that you don't care about. That's really all I'm saying. So
I know I, for one, am tired of going into those yearly meetings and seeing those numbers going down. And then hearing people complain about test scores or anything like that in this district. You can have it one way or the other. If you want to starve the school district, don't complain about bad test scores. And if you want to up test scores, fund the school. And it's been too many years of seeing that number go down, and it drives me bananas. And so,
You'll get zero argument from me. It doesn't feel good to say the words either each year.
so
I think you looked like you had a question before. Please, someone else.
Basically, you answered it already,
Okay.
so
Okay,
it's all good.
great.
And I think part of what administration can prepare is obviously some estimates on what various things would cost, and then from there we can do cash flow projections on, eliminating the defeasance, cutting it by 50%, by 25, all this can be done so we can see the impacts on taxes.
is there a situation where you can actually just up the contribution we do to paying off that interest early and then multiplying that effect in terms of how much money you get back into the...
I mean, in theory, we can,
Looking at Jill because she's given the,
Some of these bonds are probably super low interest, aren't they?
Yeah.
you got locked in at great interest
Okay,
rates.
that's
So
good.
that's one thing, like that
But we
time,
also don't short-term borrow, remember, so it's not like we're paying interest actively now either. Sorry, go ahead.
so I mean, like that is one thing that 2014 to 2020 is something you really had going for you then, too, is it's probably locked in.
Correct.
So it's not that advantageous to pay it off early.
Got it.
Correct.
Got it. Makes sense.
So it would make more sense to use
the money now.
defeasance
Yeah.
as,
But remember, we can't use it flexibly. It can only be used for the projects that were on the question. So just because we have this money sitting there in the defeasance, we can't say, we're gonna give a 5% salary increase because this money exists. That money only exists based off the legal questions that more than 50% of our population voted yes for. So it is not flexible money at all.
And so that's specifically the building to which it was...
It's all the bonds that we sold in order to do all of the building projects. So a revenue limit override referendum, which is the kind that we're talking about here, so when you do a building, it's a referendum to issue debt. You're issuing debt in order to buy materials and pay people to build buildings. A revenue limit override referendum is asking our taxpayers, we would like to make a larger investment in education. We are going to tax you for it, and here's how much, yes or no. So
Yep.
then you're not paying interest because it's money they're giving you
Yes,
that
straight
year
up.
and you're using it, exactly. So you're not issuing debt through that kind of a referendum.
Perfect.
I would just throw out there that over 80% of the school districts, of the 421 school districts in the state of Wisconsin, have operated in the last, I'm gonna say 5 years, over a revenue limit override referendum. We are in a very, very, very small minority for never even asking their community to invest more in education, a very small minority. So my little soapbox would say, we are all here to serve our community, and so a referendum is the means through which everyone gets an equal vote, right? I don't get 10 votes because I care more. We all get one vote when we go to the polls, and so whether you personally believe in it or not, back to your question, would we support it? It's a vote of our community, whether they want to invest.
So it doesn't matter what we want. What
Correct.
matters is we're here, and this is exactly what Jeanette's getting to. We're here to figure out what the district wants. And I think that we could find a way to increase funding for the school without being overly burdensome on the community in a way that the community would support. And as we discussed last time, that involves talking to people in the community and finding out what would you support and for what purposes.
Yeah, and that's where we're gonna come into play.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's where our time,
Yep.
that's where people need to be committed to that.
So I think at least
So-
this board
Yeah.
is interested.
Asking the questions and really listening to the answers, because don't ask the community what they want and then do something different,
Right.
right? I mean, we have
Yep,
to listen to whatever they tell us. So that met your needs for this. We will work on our 25-26 budget when we get to that piece, and we'll continue this forward momentum. Yes, is that what I just heard? Okay.
Make sure in the meantime, if you have questions, right, you know, Shelley, right, don't wait till the meeting. And, yeah, I mean, we have a lot of time to work on this, but there's a lot of work to do between then and then. All right, and on, funding, spending,
Yeah.
we have the childcare updates.
Yeah, so just a few things on the childcare update, and then I have a question that I am really wanting your input on. So, Caitlin Ossegard put out an initial survey, and first we hosted the meeting, and there was a lot of people there, and boy, I am so out of touch with the frenetic need for infant care. Like, wow, the number of families who are family planning around a slot that they signed up for 6 months, like, it's unbelievable to me. And how some parents, there was a couple that came and they just said, one of us is quitting our job if we don't get an infant slot. Like, that feels terrible. Like, I wanted to say, bring them to my office, snuggle some, but they don't always want to snuggle. So anyway, lots of interest. We made a commitment to those people that came to the meeting. We were going to send out that survey, not just to district parents, right? Because it's a community service levy. That means whether they're or not, they're part of our community. So they do have to live within our boundaries to be on this initial wave of who gets what slot. And we set a timeline on when they had to express interest, and we asked them questions like, how old is your child now? How many days of care? What's your preferred pickup time? Your preferred drop-off time? All of those things. We had 58 individual students that said they needed care 5 days a week. There was a lot of other kids that were 3 days a week, 3 this week, 2 that week, all that, but 5 days a week full-time care, there was 58. That was higher than we were initially planning. And I know that there's some people who filled this out who are also on waiting lists at 3 or 4 different places, right? And that is the game that they have to play. So that means last week and this week, Caitlin is working through the ages of all those people and trying to put together our initial what should the age groups of each one of those rooms look like. And so I think by the end of this week, her and I will have that completed, and that we've already got positions posted for a potential June 2nd opening date. She's hoping, right now, if you recall, Caitlin is also helping out at Black River Child Care Center as a part-time director there in the absence of them having a full-time. She's hoping to be moved over to Gebhardt Building full-time beginning May 1st, because all the deliveries are starting to come in, she's doing all the ordering and all of that stuff at the same time. By the beginning of May, she'll be wanting to train our staff members and all of those things, so that by June we're open and ready. Something that has come up that we're really having a quandary over. I have this ethical dilemma that it just doesn't feel good to me, and I'm wanting to know how it feels to you. So you brought up the BLAST program, the after-school program. It was described to me at a TCO meeting by a parent that when the BLAST sign up for after-school care comes out, they said it feels like the Hunger Games. Like, people are like, we've got to get on the list because we're only allowed, right, we're budgeted for 80 people and we currently have 100 regular attendees, sometimes up to 120 that are signed up. So our community is loudly telling us that after-school care is a need of theirs. It feels terrible that because you won the Hunger Games, you get free after-school childcare, and now we're gonna start an after-school program, but you have to pay us $15 a day to come because you weren't one of these lucky winners. That does not feel good to me at all. And childcare programs function because the littles are so staff intensive, they're more expensive. By the time you get to school age, you're gonna have more kids and less staff, that's where you make more of your money to balance things out. What Jill and I have talked about is, what if we provided before school care and charge families for that, because we currently don't have a free option for that. So before school care would be at a fee, and we are proposing, we haven't talked to the whole admin yet, but that the before school care would happen at either Forest Street or Red Creek. That way an aide who works in that building the rest of the day, we could flex their hours, or we could add hours to their day and they could work before school care in those buildings. Then we're not busing them back and forth, and it wouldn't interfere with the staffing levels over at Gebhardt where the rest of the daycare center is happening. But then after school, we would either we'd create another Blast-like program at Forest Street, just for Forest Street students, and not charge for it. Or we would make all elementary at Blast, and we would have to increase the staffing at the Red Creek Blast and have it for all kids. Because when we first did our Fund 80 levy, it was to start, we started receiving that levy January 1. We are not paying all those people until June, so we have extra money in what we levied this year. We could use those funds to offer free after-school childcare for all K-5 students next year up until the January 1, when in fall you have the opportunity to reset that Fund 80 levy again for one more year, and then it's time to rewrite the Blast grant, and we could write the Blast grant for serving a much higher population. With our proven success for the number of kids who are already attending, I think that application would look fantastic. We honestly weren't sure we would get 80 regular attendees when this Blast grant was written. We believe the funding is there, barring anything crazy, because those are federal funds that come into the state, which are then distributed out to the schools, so that could happen. But it feels very wrong to me that these 100 get free after-school childcare, and because you weren't one of those first 100, you have to pay $14 a day for after-school care for the exact same program. So, thoughts on using the Fund 80 levy that we have now and providing it free for next school year?
You think that's sufficient for how many seats?
Jill's math told me about 20 kids after school programming.
A lot.
Pardon me?
That doesn't seem like a lot. How many are in the gap?
That's about the gap.
Is that the gap?
Close.
Close to
Well,
the gap.
yeah, I mean, so we're funded at 80 through the grant,
For 80 students, yes.
and then we're currently at 100, so we're running the ragged edge of sanity over there, from what I can tell.
And doing it very well.
Right,
and
right,
providing great
right.
services.
Yeah, I mean, budgetarily, ragged
Yeah,
edge of sanity.
yes, yes.
Operationally, they're doing fantastic. So
Yes.
what we're thinking is we're gonna go to 120 seats with this money.
And I want to have some conversation with those that are working Blast. Does it make sense? I didn't realize they have like 40 first graders, or is it 40 kindergarten? I can't remember what she said, but very young, that we used to not even service them through Blast. So does it make more sense to create a Blast-like at Forest Street for just those two age kids, and then have a separate one at Red Creek for the 2nd through 5th grade? So does it make sense to have two parallel programs or one large one? I don't know that. I want to make sure it's financially feasible and with your permission before going to them to work out those details. But that's what I'm proposing, that next fall after school. And that Fund 80 levy, there are school districts throughout the state that provide after-school programming free of charge for everyone through that community service levy. Again, our community has told us loud and clear that is a significant need. I feel like if we're trying to address the childcare problem, this is a very real childcare problem that we could address with the help of a grant.
Do we have any handle on what the cost difference would be cramming everybody into Red Creek versus dividing into Red Creek and Forestry? Is there a significant difference in cost and or staffing?
We'd have to
required?
break down the supervision, because obviously the BLAST program right now, that grant was written for very low teacher to student ratio. Our next grant will probably broaden that a little bit as well, because it is written for very small group size. So our staffing levels are high. That means if we're not, for now, that staffing level has to stay the same while that grant is still active. Once that grant goes away, we would make that a little bit larger. So I'm saying it's pretty expensive there because of the staffing levels, and because it would be younger learners who would probably have to be a higher staffing level at Forest Street as well. So I'm betting it's comparable. But you're right, sometimes there's efficiencies, like food service, they do snacks after school. It's probably easier for them to do snacks at one building as opposed to two, but is that gonna show up significantly financially? I don't believe so. Would you think, do you agree with that, Jill? It won't be a significant financial difference? I don't think so either. And so I want them to decide which is better, one big blast or two separate mini. I want the people involved in that to help decide that. What I'm seeking your permission for is, are you okay using that Fund 80 levy that was set for childcare to provide after-school childcare free of charge for next year, knowing that when we get the chance to rewrite the blast grant, we will write it for more money to be able to serve all of those, and that would come off of the Fund 80 levy.
I'm still a little confused. This is the Gebhardt money?
So you're calling it Gebhardt money, but that is Fund 80 community service levy that was levied for the purposes of childcare.
Yeah.
You don't start using it until the childcare center opens, so
Which
there's
is in
5
June.
months of
Okay.
money there that has not been spent.
And so this.
How else could you use it, Shelley? Like if we didn't say this, like what else would you use? Like,
We wouldn't overspend, it would just sit there, we would probably levy a little less next year, is what we would probably do.
Okay.
You can't spend it on anything other than what we said we were gonna spend it on.
Yep. So you're not gonna go back and invest more into the shorter time frame.
I don't think so. The other thing that we hadn't initially budgeted for when Jill did the business model for childcare, we did not put any school age summer programming. We now, based off of the survey, that is also a need from families. And so we believe the added income from the school age summer program would also offset some of the costs for the after school programming. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
How does blast work on Fridays?
Why don't they?
How does it?
It doesn't. There is no blast on Fridays.
Oh, okay. Because it seems to me like the early out on Friday has always been kind of an inconvenience for childcare. It's like you got kids home an hour early today.
On the survey that we did, there are several people who are asking for childcare on inclement weather days. So that's something that we'll have to try to figure out. And then on planned professional development days. So these people that are doing, if you all agree and we do free after school, school age childcare, we would do a for-fee childcare full days for on some of those scheduled days off, but those would be for a fee.
So by definition, isn't the whole point of an inclement weather day is considered too dangerous to try to get kids to the buildings?
So when I make the decision about whether we're closing school or not, I am thinking about school buses traveling over 500 miles around, and I'm thinking about 8-year-olds standing outside waiting for a bus, a lot of things. There have been very few days where I've said our campuses are closed because it's not safe for anyone to travel. That has happened probably 4 times in the 12 years I've been making that decision. So when I hear from staff that are disappointed that they're still expected to come in, I always say, you choose where you live, right? So where you're driving in from, with all due respect, you choose where you live. And when we make the decision, it's based off bus travel. Individuals make the decision as to whether they can commute back and forth or not.
Most businesses don't shut down.
Correct. And that is what I often hear. I still went to work at Walmart, I still went to my job at the bank, I still went whatever. And so that's why it's such our decision is based off of school buses. And when it's dark in the morning, when those buses go through, right, and there's
So
snowdrifts, it's a totally different story than.
There's no liability concerns with trying to run some sort of care during.
Absolutely not. We are not transporting for childcare, nor are we transporting our employees. I would be 100% there.
I think it's a good call because I feel like I've been part of the Running the Bulls for several years now in terms of trying to grab those slots for the BLAST program. for my own family. And I have this sneaking suspicion that if we were to look at it a little bit more in depth, that the families that are able to get off work are from a specific kind of subgroup of the population, and that the families who may need it the most are the ones that are probably the ones who are not getting the slot. So I really would support making sure that we can get those slots at the same cost to everybody.
So, do you need a motion?
I would love action on that, yes.
I'll make a motion. I make a motion to offer after-school care at the same rate as our BLAST programming to meet the difference in the need of the current after-school needs for kiddos.
Using Fund 80.
Using Fund 80.
I'll second.
Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thanks, everyone, I appreciate it.
Anything else?
That is all I had on childcare. Do you have any questions about it?
Moving on to the Heart Spirits Group.
Sure, so I was asked to put this on the agenda. I'm curious if board members have any questions after the communications that I shared with you?
I do,
Yes.
but it doesn't need to take time here. Is there a way we can see this material?
Sure. Yep.
Because it's kind of, it's very difficult to judge or evaluate from.
Yep, absolutely. Do you have a copy of the book?
Couple copies at Red Creek and I think the rest
I have
of
some
them.
downstairs.
Perfect. If you bring some at the end, that would be
Yeah,
great.
doesn't have to be now, just in general.
And so the agenda item was to ask you if you had any follow-up, and then also if you were interested in hearing from Brandon how things are at Red Creek, remembering that this agenda went out even another week early. It's been a really long time since this was our topic. So do you want to share any adjustments made at Red Creek?
Yeah.
So overall, we're just kind of looking to move on and move along in our partnerships with both families and the Ho-Chunk Nation, and some of them that double as both. So it was an event that happened, and we're ready to move on as a whole. I had 6 people reach out with requests from follow-up families from inside of Red Creek. We shared with them the intended message of the presentation, which was about personal safety and choosing a safe person to go to, which was the intended message of the Heart Spirits group. One procedure that we did add was for outside presenters to fill out a form with a proper timeline of when the form is completed, submitted, approved, and when the actual presentation takes place. It's just good practice, no matter who it is, who it's with. Some of the things on there: who you are, what's your message, what materials will you be using, and then what resources do you need from us in order to give your presentation. So I think it's just good practice, no matter who the presenter is and what it's about. Used it with Teach Children to Save coming up at the end of April, and it worked really nice because then we could make sure that we had all the materials that they need when they do come. So I mentioned it's for outside presenters. This particular situation with the Heart Spirits was really kind of like an in-between, because it was some inside, some outside, and it was kind of muddy in the middle of that. So that's kind of how it went. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer. If not, it's okay too.
And so the board can see that we have, well, maybe I shouldn't have assumed that. We have several fantastic members of the Heart Spirits Committee that have joined us this evening, and I just would like to take this opportunity to publicly recognize some of the fantastic work that they have done in our community over the last couple of years. If you've not had the opportunity to see some of the magnificent art displays, there have been so many meaningful conversations and so much meaningful dialogue, and their whole purpose of raising awareness through art has come through loud and clear in every one of the activities that they have done. It was unfortunate that this happened and tainted the name of this organization of just powerful women who are doing great things. And if you got the opportunity to see some of our high school kids absolutely shine when they are engaging in some of this Heart Spirits work, like they feel like they have found their home in some of these conversations that have happened. And so it's fantastic, fantastic stuff. And it just all got ugly really, really, really fast. And like most things that get ugly really fast, it burns out when people calm down. And I just want to publicly thank this group for the advocacy and the awareness and the education and the beautiful art that you've created and continue to create. So I appreciate you guys coming tonight, and I hope that you didn't come feeling like you had to defend in any way, shape, or form the work of your organization, because you've been an absolute value added to our community and our organization. We'll have one other.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I'm part of the Heart Spirits Committee, and I'm also the Director of Curriculum Instruction. So there's two different roles that are happening for me in this conversation. I think it's important to know that the Heart Spirits Committee is still working on moving forward in the community. We had a workshop, if any of you have attended the workshop, we had a workshop at the public library 2 weeks ago. And right now we have the heart display at the Chamber of Commerce in downtown Black River Falls. And so the whole idea of that is to raise awareness and provide education for the community. And as I'm speaking to you in the Director of Curriculum Instruction role, we also have policy around when we are talking about some of these topics that are really important to families. And that policy would be to notify families before the information was sent out. And so in that role, I take responsibility for that, and that should have happened. So for that, I'm sorry, and ask for grace, and that I will make sure to follow that policy in the future.
We talked about, so just a question, in a situation like this, to prevent it in the future, I know you have a form that you're gonna fill out, but if there were changes within the curriculum, or if there were any changes that would be significant, have you thought about like postponing the date to a later date? Just so everybody's on the same page?
Yes. Definitely timeliness and making sure everyone's on the same page and everyone has been communicated with is definitely be the proper process.
Hindsight is 20/20 yet again.
And we're humans, we all make mistakes, but I just, when it comes to the kids, parents are not gonna be happy if it were to happen again.
Correct.
I have like two concerns that kind of were when this whole thing kind of was happening, which is that there are a lot of parents that are concerned about some of the language and stuff, but there's a lot of parents who are also concerned about the safety of their kids. And I think that the situation highlighted a couple things, which was the need for our staff to make sure that they feel equipped to have hard conversations, because missing and murdered and Indigenous women or people, they target them so young that the age group that they were working with, they need to have that awareness, or really tragic things can happen really quickly. And we've got a lot of students here that are subjected to that. So I think two things. I think I'd like to, sit with how can we start to prepare people for having that conversation, because it may be a book now, but what if one of the students came to their teacher and was like, hey, this is happening to me and I'm not okay with it? Would they be prepared for that conversation? I guess would be concerns that I have if they felt unprepared to have it then. And so the diversity and cultural training, I think, is another huge component that we just really have to sit with, because I think it can benefit all of us. And I know, Shelley, I talked to you about it and you were really supportive. So those were kind of some of the concerns I had when I was, the situation was kind of unfolding. And I did grab the book and read it and, do my due diligence, met with everybody. But yeah, I think those are things we should probably spend some time sitting with and figuring out how to work through as a community.
So there's two issues here, and there's the one getting at you. My personal opinion is this is a targeted age group. So some sort of discussion needs to take place. But the larger issue, and frankly the less controversial issue, is how does material get vetted? And how do parents get informed about anything that could, it doesn't matter whether I think it's controversial or not. I could think, we should do this in 5th grade, 10th grade, doesn't matter what I think. What matters is how we inform parents and how that process is codified. And we had a discussion about, can we delay a date if we have to? How early do you get forms, and how fast do you review it? And then who is reviewing? Surely, this stuff doesn't come to the school board, it comes to
You. I'm
Right,
guessing.
right,
I'm
yes,
guessing, right?
Yes.
Nicole, can I just share something real briefly before you answer that? So our human growth and development policy is very community oriented, and it is really all about parent rights and notification of school when you're talking about topics that I hear both of you, and you're absolutely right. Fifth graders today are not the fifth graders of 30 years ago. I absolutely hear you. And parents get to have a voice in some of this stuff. And so that curriculum and that policy dictates that there's a community committee that Nicole is part of, and there's a board member that's part of it, and parents are invited to be a part of it, and they get to talk about each of those things. And so that human growth and development comes to the full board for approval anytime there's substantive changes made to it. So that could happen 3 years in a row, or it could happen once every 20 years, right? It depends on what's happening with that curriculum. Some of the vocabulary that was used, I don't know that that vocabulary would come up in a human growth and development curriculum at those age levels. But some of the vocabulary that was used absolutely comes up in the human growth and development curriculum in middle school, right? And so that is the procedure that we should have looked at. We should have pulled up human growth and development policy, and we should have looked at the age groups and what was approved. We know that. That's what we're apologizing for. We are apologizing for not using our policy. So I don't think the system is broken. We didn't use our system is what happened. And so we have a procedure for this, and we just didn't utilize it in this instance.
And how often does the human growth and development meet? Is it every 3 years?
Every 3 years, they have to come together. It only has to come to the board if there's substantive changes. So they could meet and say, looks good, right? I'm guessing this next time they will meet and they'll have some dialogue about appropriate age levels for and protective behaviors and what all of that looks like and means and all of that. So,
Who is on that from the board?
it's an ad hoc, so when that committee needs to meet, the board president will say, we need a committee member or two, I can't remember. I can look up the policy that would tell us exactly. But
It's all about percentages. It's all about percentages.
Yes,
And
yes.
it was 2 last time.
So it says like there can't be more than 3, whatever the percentage of, like say 20% can be instructional staff, 10% can be administrative, like whatever. So it tries very hard through policy to balance voice.
And we invite members of the clergy. It's really structured of who gets invited and who you need to participate.
Correct. And this is the year that that committee needs to get together.
Yes, so that's coming up. All sorts of great opportunities to do good work.
I just saw a lot of pick me, pick me.
Before we move on, could we just get the folks from Art Spirits to stand up just so we recognize like who you are and that you're part of that committee? And then I'd just like to say thanks for all the hard work that you've done and for helping to bring something to life. That's it.
All right, thank you, everyone. All right, that concludes the 6 series. We're on to the 7 series. Next, we're at 7.2. We'll talk about Brandon again.
Well, I wasn't gonna, but since you did. So our employment recommendations have changed since your packets were generated. We have 2 very, very, very long-time staff members who are retiring. Both Brad Markart, who is finishing his 33rd year teaching in the school district of Black River Falls, and Beth Hansen, who has been a first grade dynamo for over 30 years. I couldn't remember. 35 years Beth Hansen has been teaching first grade. So they were added to your list once the board packet went out. So for your information, you will also see that Brandon Jar is sliding from Red Creek over to the district office. Feel free to ask him any budget questions that you may have from here on out. Just kidding. Just kidding. You can see the other employment up there, but I just really wanted to call out Brad and Beth. You know, in a time when we talk about how do we retain our teachers, you have someone who's taught here for 35 years, followed by someone for 33 years. Brad wrote an absolutely lovely letter. Did you scan his in the, so Brad's is now in there. I don't know if Beth's made it in there yet. They are both in there. They're just lovely, lovely, lovely people who have served our community and hundreds of children. So excited for them. And those do need your approval.
Wait, we're approving him to retire?
Yep, they need your permission, and you have to approve Brandon moving offices.
do we need a motion for that?
Yes.
I motion to approve the retirement,
Thank you. The employment recommendations would cover all.
employment recommendations, all of
Thank
them.
you.
Okay, wonderful.
Perfect. So just for the board's knowledge, support staff don't need your approval, but professional staff do need your approval.
I'll second.
Thank you.
Further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next is staff handbook recommendations.
So we offered, per usual, that we invite anybody who is interested to come to the table to talk about, I'm not seeing the handout, was there nothing in there? Sorry, I'm looking through my packet.
I didn't pull it up either, so I didn't see it. If I can find it.
We each year ask any staff members if there's a support staff, support services, and teacher handbook, and we invite anybody that would like to come to the table to have conversations about the wording in there. We always say that that handbook is the formal relationship between employer and employee, and it is there to protect everybody and just provide absolute clarity. Last year, we did not convene a handbook committee because there were no changes that we were recommending. This year, we did convene a committee, and all of our changes were changes to policy numbers because of our transition from our current policies to Neola. Our handbook references a lot of our employment policies, and so all of those need to be updated. We didn't really have any substantive changes in there. There was a conversation about the amount of unpaid leave that some staff members fall into, and there was actually a recommendation by one of our employees that they wanted us to withhold, like, here's the example I'll give. Let's just say that the board approves a 4% salary increase. They wanted 2% of that to be withheld all year, and then in spring, if that employee did not go into unpaid leave, they get that 2% in a lump sum as a bonus for not going into unpaid leave. And if you went into unpaid leave, you don't get that 2% of your salary. The group that came to talk about it was very excited about it, and when Jill and I brought it back to the admin team, we're far less excited about it. I feel like when you get your new paycheck, your new contract for the year, if you don't see at least enough of an increase to fill your car with gas, that doesn't feel great coming back for a second year of employment. And so withholding that high of a percentage felt like we were giving a consequence to everyone when, as opposed to targeting more work on the people who are abusing the unpaid leave situation. So we are not making that recommendation to you, but I wanted you to know that that was brought up by the staff.
Aren't there legitimate reasons somebody could end up on unpaid leave as well?
Some, and so we said that what we came to with that group was if it was a non-FMLA approved unpaid leave, because certainly there's federal protections that go with that. So we are not making that recommendation. All of the handbook language changes are really updates to policy numbers, so pretty benign. But it's nice that they come together to talk about it, and they feel like they have a voice.
The one, Shelley, you might want to mention vacation pay, giving that right when people start. So the language used to say that people would basically work for us and accrue leave while they were working, but not be able to use it until after that first year. So they would have no vacation until after 1 year of employment.
And that's only our 12-month staff.
12-month staff. So we've changed that we would provide them with 40 hours of vacation upon hire, basically. So we didn't feel great about that when we'd have to tell people. And it doesn't help us in this hiring landscape either. So
is that still accrued throughout the year though, Jill, or is it like they could walk in and
we
within
give it
the
to
first
them
month
up
take a
front.
week off?
If they leave us before they've worked the full year, we do a pay deduction.
Prorated.
Yeah.
Yeah, we prorate it and deduct.
I've worked under that.
The 40 hours the first day?
Yes.
They have it, and then if they leave us before they work that full year, then we.
If they used it.
Can they use it all the second week though?
If they want, but then they're out of it for the, so rather than work the whole time and then get it handed to you at the end of your first year, or sometimes you'll just earn like pathetic amounts of it slowly over time. But I know I've worked under that system where they just say, here's your leave, and you have to pay us back for it if you leave before your year is done. But from year one, you start getting.
When we talk to staff, their number one ask is always flexibility in scheduling, flexibility in time. And so when we're recruiting some of our 12-month people and they have other choices, it's tough to come and have 0 paid time off your first year.
I know for a fact that I have compared two different jobs, one of which had upfront leave and one of which had accrual, and it was a factor in me selecting the job that I selected.
I
It
think
does
the younger
matter.
generation
That's
becomes
the-
even
Because I had,
They could work a week and say, "Oh, this isn't really for me, I'm gonna take next week off, and then quit after the second week.
but then they have to pay it all
Wow.
back. They haven't earned it.
Would you
They have
ever
to
use a
they have to pay it back
stipulation?
before the year. If they haven't worked the full year, they have to reimburse all of that.
Right.
So they don't actually
Sure.
get it until the year is.
Get it back.
But I was thinking of a stipulation, like in the handbook, you could have, like, you will receive 40 hours up front, but may not be used until after a certain number of days that you've been hired. It's hard when it's a yearly contract and they're new hires because they don't go on a probationary period like in the first 90 days. And granted, we have issues with staffing but that was the other thing I could think of is new hire, yep, we have this 40 hours, it's sitting here, but you can't use it till after your 90 days or 60 days. And that's what some places do. You can accrue this amount of PTO, but you can't use it until after.
I also think it's something to be said for the fact that these people are gonna be working with small people who don't wash their hands very often, and it's likely that they could be sick the second or third
That's-
week.
Sick time is different than vacation time.
Yeah, it is different.
And we're talking 12 months, so our 12-month employees are maintenance staff, secretarial staff, supervisors. Yeah.
Has there been any sort, well, I guess it hasn't, there can't have been because they never got leave until after the first year, so
To
it's
be
never
honest,
been a
we
problem.
did, I have given on my permission, I have done some vacation upfront for certain individuals that we were trying to recruit from other places who had some job offers that were far more financially beneficial than ours. And so I have used vacation because there is also in the handbook somewhere it says superintendent's authority. So I have, and I think that it is best, 12 months is a long time to work without any vacation. So like you said, I think that's not modern hiring. I just think that that's antiquated practice to not have any vacation to start. So.
Well, and the research shows that people don't misuse it. If you look at the family-friendly research and all the stuff that went into that, like, businesses are becoming more family-friendly, and because of it, people aren't taking advantage either, so.
So the handbook gets approved, the language gets approved by the board, which makes it then board policy. So when we talk about our staff handbook, we talk about it as if it is board policy because you approve each one of those changes. So I would be looking for a motion if somebody.
Can I just clarify too for Jeanette, because of the way we pay twice a month, so and so much further, so people work for 2 weeks, they don't get paid for another 2 weeks later. So we kind of hold the cards on whether we pay them on that payroll or not, if they've left or whatever, we kind of know more. So I'm not real concerned about that, but certainly that's always something we could add later.
Okay, so I'll make a motion to approve the handbook language as revised.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Yep, up to the 8 series, the early college credit and start college now.
Give me Nicole coming up.
Oh, I'm not,
No,
I'm
okay.
putting my computer down, so it's getting too warm on my lap.
Thank you.
So we are seeking approval for of the list of students that are also in the packet for admittance to the early college credit program or Start College Now. And so what I shared with you is information about Start College Now and the early college credit program so that you could kind of see the differences in how they work. But essentially, Start College Now allows for students to take courses through different tech schools and give them a jump start into careers. And the early college credit program provides that jump start into college credit. Those tech courses also are transferable into Wisconsin system. So it's a really amazing opportunity for students for preparing for college and career readiness, and gets our students that extra leverage that they need for their futures. Just additionally, just for your information, we've also been working a lot on a series of different academies where students can participate in full academies around welding or agriculture. One's in education, one's in IT, and they take a series of classes and through the course of a trimester or two, depending on the academy, and come out with certification. So like nursing or certification in education, like those different things. Again, providing students not only with college credit, but experience and some of the things they need to do for career or college. So it helps our population of students who are on either track. So I think we need a motion to approve the list of students.
And so you maybe saw when you were looking at the budget recommendation that we are asking for more money into the account that funds these, because we have put limits on the number of students that can participate in some of those college transfer academies, because we can't afford to pay tuition for all of our kids to be taught elsewhere and pay staff to teach them here. We can't do both. And so you saw that we're trying to increase that budget center because they're very popular with kids, and we know it's great for kids. The more college credits they get before they leave us, that is setting them up for success later. So there is quite a hefty list, and know that not all of them that were requested have been approved. So.
And just on the exciting note of all of it, like when we really think about our mission of like with individualized paths to education and career, this is one of the main ways that we really can do that, where students can really figure out some of their future in high school yet. So it's exciting.
Yeah, so I'll make a motion to approve the list of students and what they're choosing to participate.
Right. Any further discussion on this one? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
Motion carries, thank you. All right, the attendance accountability policy. So we did discuss this in policy subcommittee, excuse me, and to summarize what was a pretty lengthy conversation, that right now the policy subcommittee is not putting forth a recommendation on policy. If that's something the board wants to discuss further, we can talk about that. The kind of summarize some of the talking points. The policy subcommittee was not sure that there's any sort of policy that we can put into place that is necessarily going to move the needle on attendance. The one policy, I guess, that's been discussed before is holding back students who fall below some certain threshold. I was looking at some more research on that, and the fear of the policy subcommittee and my fear is that if we put something like that in place, we're going to have to be very surgical in how we word this, because what I'm afraid is going to happen is we have a student who is, say, attends 70% of the days or whatever, right? And that student is not likely to persist if they are held back a year. This is already a student who maybe doesn't have familiar support or is just not academically motivated. And all the research I've seen, I know Shelley has said the same, has shown that if you hold a student back after third or sixth grade, something like that is the threshold.
Yeah.
If you're going to hold them back, you have to hold them back very early in their career. After that, the percentage of graduation is just atrocious, right? They're almost without fail. If you hold them back in, say, 8th grade, they're just not going to graduate high school. And these are already students that are not engaged, not attending, not completing homework, all the things we need them to do anyways. So, and that was, that was the concern of the policy subcommittee as well. So, there you go. That's at. I still think there are things we can do as a board. I think there is work that we can do as a community. I think a more efficient process outside of the district, because this is not just a district problem. We are the scorekeeper on attendance, but, this is a societal problem, so. With that, thoughts on where we want to go from here?
I would like to add something.
Yeah.
For 8.2 attendance accountability discussion and policy, we could invite court system, social services, people of Great Nation, Ho-Chunk Education Department, board member, and DA.
And what was the last one?
District attorney, DA. They're mostly all elected. So they could be in our, this is just my opinion, they could be in this committee or meeting to bring what kind of a teeth, I like that word, what kind of a teeth we would like to enforce, as it says here. So this is just my opinion. The 5 agencies, court system, not the judge himself, maybe his assistant or whoever they are, and social services, Ho-Chunk Nation, board members, and district attorney.
So as the county seat, we are required by state statute to convene a truancy committee once every 5 years and develop a truancy plan. We are up this year, and so you almost got the list exactly correct. It would be Ho-Chunk Health and Human Services. I've talked to the education department a great deal. Next month we'll be signing that MOU with them. Attendance is not dramatically called out in there. I look at Barb because 12 years ago, Barb and I served on a attendance task force that we worked on for 2 to 3 years to try to improve student attendance. So state statute does not call for a board member to sit on that committee. If this group would like to nominate somebody to be on that ad hoc committee, I'm certainly willing to invite you to be part of those conversations, but those conversations are scheduled to happen.
Okay, so I like the idea of like, that's a community-based kind of conversation, and these are the community-based entities you're gonna need. Can we update the policy to just increase the frequency so that we're not doing it every 5 years, but we're more closely working together and able to troubleshoot more frequently when
So
needed?
that one's based on state statute. We cannot. So that's required.
We can't.
We can
have to
gather
do it
it
at least that much.
We could do it more often, but
Yeah.
this meeting, this is set out in state statute.
Right, but I'm saying if we took the model of the state statute and implemented something where we're in conversation, where it's meeting,
And so our principals each meet with the county every month, and they talk about their attendance students, and they talk about where they're at in the county's continuum. So, I mean, that big committee doesn't get convened that often, but there are definitely attendance conversations. I always, Health and Human Services is our first stop, because in Jackson County, any truancy referral goes to Human Services before it goes to the courthouse. So that is something that I would love to advocate for a change on, but that is currently the way Jackson County chooses to do it. So we don't file with Corporation Counsel, we file with Human Services. So that slows our whole process down significantly.
I guess one of my thoughts on this was, like bringing it up, was like to graduate, you have to have a certain GPA, right?
Nope, you have to have earned enough credits.
So many credits,
Yep.
yes. But to earn a credit, you have to have a passing grade.
Mm-hmm.
So something related to achievement and credits and days missed, or like somehow tied together. So if you're like the more days you miss, you'd have to get a higher, more credits to graduate or something, just so it's kind of like.
Yeah, I like where you're going with that, Nick, and it's just myself personally, like, if you're gonna choose to miss school, then you better be really good at school, because you don't need somebody to educate you, right? Like, you can self-educate yourself, or maybe your family can help you educate yourself, whatever the curriculum is, without your teachers being present for you. So if you can do that, and you can do it well, and you can prove that you have retained the knowledge, right? Then you probably don't need to be at school that much, right? And you are missing some of the social aspects of it, but that's your choice. But if you can't do that, then I do think you should have to prove that you can in a different way. And I agree with you. Like, if you're gonna miss that much school, then here's how many credits you better have if you think you're gonna graduate.
So part of my challenge with that, and I'm not arguing, please know this, because I've thought through all these conversations in my head. My challenge with that is, at high school level, there's already a rubber hitting the road. You have the credits, or you don't have the credits. Middle school, that doesn't exist, right? You failed 4 of your classes, and you had a 68% attendance rate, and you're still moving on, right? So I'm not sure the high school attendance needs to be better at the high school, please don't get me wrong, but there's already some teeth in high school because you do or don't graduate. Whereas all the other grade levels, there's not teeth in there.
And with the summer school, and Kim, is it 80%
Yeah, they
attendance?
have to be in that class for 80% of the time to be able to be eligible for summer school.
So previously, if you failed geometry or whatever, right, you could take that summer school, right, regardless, you could skip every day and then make the class up during summer school. Now you have to be in geometry class for 80% of the days to be eligible to retake it or whatever you wanna call it in summer school. So that's one step, and that,
So
is this year the
that's like
first
the
year?
opposite.
That's
You're
high
saying-
school level though?
That's
That's
high
high
school,
school
yeah.
level, yeah.
Because
So-
middle school doesn't need the credits. If they
Yeah.
fail the class, they don't have to have passed it. It's
Sure.
just
So there's no graduation requirement for middle school whatsoever. There's only one gate, and that's high school graduation.
correct. Well, there's, I'm gonna say alt ed, maybe, I can't see.
Go ahead, Dan.
Sorry, I'm gonna pull.
I think Dan had something.
Is it okay if I say something quick?
Yeah, I guess, yeah.
We'll allow it.
Thanks, Dan. So we don't make kids from the middle to summer school, right? But we strongly encourage with a letter. Your son or daughter has failed 2 or more core classes in the 24-25 school year. Summer school is being held at these days. We strongly recommend that your child comes to gain the skills that they've missed. And then what we do is we create an individualized plan for each student that failed and what guarantees they failed, and then that's what they work on in our summer school program. So while we can't say they have to be there, a lot of the parents actually use it.
Yeah, so the participation rate, if you had to estimate, is what?
I don't know.
Don't know.
Do we have an idea of how, successful it is? Do we have some nice success stories where kids
They can complete the work.
and their grades go up? Yeah.
Well, they don't get a grade per se, they
Yeah.
just complete the work to show us that they can master the skill.
I think there are like multiple questions that need to be asked. I don't know that we're like covering them all, because I think some of it is like this punitive versus non-punitive. I think there's some of this like, how can we, kind of, I think there's a value of learning that has to like kind of take place prior to them getting to middle school, where they're like understanding it as a cultural thing before they get to the point where there isn't an absenteeism taking place. And if they haven't developed that by middle school, I don't know how it's going to be a pretty big lift to get them, to shift their way of thinking about how their value system works. So I think there's got to be a tiered system of addressing it, which I think the school's already, trying to do in some ways. I like the idea of being in conversation with the other entities that can also influence that cultural component of we're going to be a culture of learning. We're going to be a community of learning. We're going to work at this together from beginning to end.
And remember that Forest Street has dismal attendance rates more so than Red Creek or middle school. And so that is certainly not a school thing, right? I mean, that is a community of learners thing, right? How do we value education as a community?
Yeah, and so I think there's got to be, we can do the middle school, and I love the donuts thing because I would show up for donuts, but I think that there's a component of it that why don't kids want to, or why aren't parents feeling like it's important? And I think there's so many different reasons why people walk into those feelings. Cultural, historical, whatever they are, those are the things we need to kind of unpack. Not that we can do that overnight, but it's important to set the trajectory so young.
And there has to be a stick of some sort. I'm sorry, I will never, so many of our truancy conversations with that same group that we were just talking about, all of those community agencies, we need a bigger carrot and a bigger stick, right? Because some people respond to the carrot and some people need the stick, right? We're not gonna come up with a solution that's gonna meet everyone's needs.
But I guess I'm curious, like the policy committee feels like the stick is large enough based on what's written?
No.
They don't feel
There's a
there's
measure.
necessarily a policy within the district that.
Is a stick.
Yeah.
We feel, I feel like
I don't
our
feel
community
it is a
agencies have to help us. I feel like there has to be fines. I feel like parents have to be hauled to court. And
The
not because I
court
want them in the system, but I want them to have to stand there and say, you're right, I didn't bring my kid to school 60 days out of kindergarten.
Yeah.
You're right, I did that. I want some level of need to answer to somebody other than us, right? Because it's hard for us to be the carrot holder and the stick holder. It's really hard for us to try to
And
be
the,
both.
and the only carrot and stick holder.
Correct.
And that's where policy, that's where policy subcommittee felt like there wasn't a policy that we could enact that is going to be a big enough carrot or stick within the powers of the district. They felt like it needed to be outside agencies.
And not to diminish, but you're talking about carrots. How can we make our learning environment someplace that people want to be a part of? How can we unpack all of those things so that families and students want to be part of our schools? And you're talking about a stick. This is the rule, and if you don't do it, here's the stick, right? I mean, you guys are talking opposite sides of this, and both are necessary.
Right.
One is not gonna close the attendance gap for all of our kids.
But to summarize real quick, you guys have looked at everything, nothing much that we can do.
Well,
We
Through
want
policy.
to- from
everything is
policy.
a very big word, Alex, right? We talked about it that was what we spent the bulk of the time on. And we could not come up with policy language, an idea that within the scope of what the district has control over, a policy that would be effective.
Well, and so you're talking basically like sociology, anthropology, we need people in the community, that's the carrot, that's not us. And you're talking the court system, basically, which is also not us.
And I don't think that, I think cultural is like everybody, that's the whole of us, that's everyone.
Yeah.
And so I think that like writing policy that includes a community component and that acknowledges that not all of us are coming from the same places and with the same ideals and the same beliefs, but how do we wrap them in so that people want to get their kids to school? You know, because there's people that don't.
But the question is, can we as a school board write policy that does that?
That's our job.
Well, I think so. I mean, okay. I mean, if you fail first grade because mommy didn't get you to school 45 days out of the year, I mean, that's like accountability, major accountability. And I think if you want to increase our attendance and expectations, I mean, there has to be a line drawn in the sand and say, all right, sorry, maybe you should do better next time.
And it sounds like that line is there, that path is there at the high school level and above,
Because
but
of grade.
middle school and less, it's not. So I guess I'd like to, personally, I'd like to see us focus on like what we can do to tighten up middle school and below then. You know, and right now, to me, the avenue that we can do is attendance. And we could create policy that says that like, look, if your kid misses X percentage of school days and they don't have passing grades, like I said, like if you're an A student and you missed a bunch of school, you're still an A student, okay? Like there's no reason that you shouldn't move on to the next grade just because you missed school. Like you still are getting it, you're understanding it. But I think we could bring that piece to this to bring a little bit of a stick. And yet I hear what you're saying about holding people back, but well, come on, like
It's
they're
holding them
getting held back
accountable
for a
too.
reason.
And I don't disagree that that's holding them accountable.
So-
I just want to be clear that the research shows, and especially as you get into 7th and 8th grade, you know, if you hold a 7th grader back, they're just not going to graduate. Just
Yeah,
like-
we have to start earlier.
What does the research? What does the research say about how productive those kids are even when they do graduate?
Well,
Yes,
so-
I just feel like if we are not starting them earlier with the holding them back, you can't do it at a middle school level. You have to start it earlier. And years past, attendance and passing grades, passing classes played a key role in if you were passed on. yeah, we worry about the social status, how they will feel. But right now, they're not taking the initiative to do their work or even show up.
You're
And
right, that
maybe-
first grader isn't. What do we do?
But then you can't pass, how can you keep passing them on if they're not in school? Because they're never up to the grade level where everybody else is. And I think that's what we have done as a whole, have failed a group of kids by keep passing them on, whether or not they're doing well in school, and passing every class.
So I've been in education for 32 years, and for all 32 of those years, we have not held kids back as readily as you're suggesting. It is a very outdated practice. There is zero educational research to support that you ask a kid to do the same grade level again. Something else has to change. It can't be more of the same thing, right? And if we're talking about family behaviors, we need something else in our community to step in for that family before we're holding a second grader back. They can't get themselves to school by themselves, right?
And if they didn't do it the first time, why would they do it the second time?
You have to do
Like,
something
But then-
different. It can't be
that's
more
just-
of the same.
If they didn't
But
value
maybe
coming
the first
once,
time, if they didn't show up and they failed and were held back, the parents may think twice.
They might.
And there may be parents in our community that do think that way, but right now, what are we doing? Nothing. We're just keeping on letting them miss and passing them on.
Well, I think trying to intuit the intentions of the parents is a trap. I mean, unless again, I'm an anthropologist. Unless we have anthropologists out there talking to people, or sociologists or giving surveys, which don't work, or whatever it might be, we don't know. I mean, the real question is, why aren't these kids showing up? And trying to create policy that makes them show up is pointless if we don't know why they're not showing up. And so either we as the school board go out with clipboards, or we hire a consultant, or somebody else does it. And so I think what we were saying originally, what Brad was saying is, there are things that could be done, but it's not going to be through altering our policies currently. What Michaela's saying is, we should be talking to communities more
yeah.
that maybe help make that done. Now the question is that a policy change that we can do, or is that, I mean, perhaps the first thing we should do is have somebody attend as a listener, not as a contributor, and see what goes on at the 5-year, before we talk about having more 5-year meetings. What if it's, I mean, basically, if we want to get involved, send a representative from the school board or two, and just listen to what's being said on this issue, and then report back and move on from there. Does that sound like that's
Sounds like a
doing
self-nomination,
something?
Alex.
It's doing something, but it's not altering our official policies.
It sounds like a self-nomination, Alex.
When is this
second
thing?
your self-nomination.
Well, I'm not nominating myself to do it, but I'm going to start with the suggestion. First, we have to deal with the issue on the table, which is, do we accept the recommendations of the policy committee on this one?
There are no recommendations.
There's no recommendation. The point of the
Well,
policy
that's-
committee is that there are no recommendations.
Regarding the attendance policy, no recommendations.
No
came
recommendations.
forth. Later, there's the first reading of 1,000 series. Those come as recommendations.
When is this?
It is a 5,000, so I'm gonna bet June.
June, okay.
So I will, just to plant a seed, something that I have definitely seen, it was years ago when I was an elementary principal, there are some schools that they dictate if students are failing X number of classes before high school when you need to collect credits, they require the students to attend summer school or remediation, and they require it. And the reason I saw this, there was like dual custody kids that lived somewhere else. They failed classes. They were coming to Black River Falls to stay with their other parent, and we had to certify for the other school district that they attended summer school while they were here.
Okay.
So that's a possibility, but then it comes down to the exact same question. So you said they must, they didn't, now what? So just sharing that. I've asked our principals at admin meeting, I've said to them, what ideas do you have to help the board feel like they're addressing this problem? And this is the conversation.
I have a question. I know we've talked about the attendance during COVID.
Yes.
So prior to COVID, the attendance was just as poor?
No, as a nation, attendance has not fully recovered from COVID. It is a nationwide problem. Every conference you go to, it is talking about how do we recover. So most districts across the nation have not been to pre-COVID levels. We have always been just at the state average for attendance or slightly below, but they used to measure percent daily attendance and now they're measuring chronic absenteeism. So they've changed the metric again, so it's hard to go back pre and do direct analysis. And our gap between our Ho-Chunk students and all other ethnicities has always been significant, but never as significant as post-COVID. That gap has increased since COVID. So we've always been at or slightly below on a different metric. Now chronic absenteeism, it used to be percent daily attendance and the numbers didn't fluctuate as much, whereas chronic absentee, either you are here 90% or you're not. It just as much more detailed, I guess. So the metric has changed. Our gap is greater and our levels are below state average and the whole nation is worse than it was during COVID.
Well, in businesses, what I've heard from different ones who work, getting people to show up.
Employee attendance is also worse since COVID.
Yes, and so that has been terrible since COVID, post-COVID.
All of the HR rules went out the window during COVID, right?
Yep.
And everyone still trying to recover.
Yeah.
This is a silly, basic question that I just don't know, but when we're talking about discussion with outside agencies, you're talking about, is there like a Ho-Chunk educational liaison that you talk to and how often?
Yeah,
How
so
does that happen?
Barb's on that committee as well. April, we will be meeting at the Ho-Chunk Nation Tribal Office Building because we are going to be signing the memorandum of understanding between the school district of Black River Falls and the Ho-Chunk Nation Education Department. So yes, I meet with them. Nicole and I meet with them on a monthly basis. It's been a little bit less often recently. The human services are invited to truancy conversations, so that is a separate entity.
So all I could say immediately is, what would the Ho-Chunk recommend?
If only Barb had a magic wand, and I'm going to paraphrase. Is it okay if Barb speaks?
Yeah,
Okay,
absolutely.
so I'm going to paraphrase first, Barb, and then you feel free to correct me. I feel like Barb and I have a lot of trust after a lot of years, so I'm going to say it. I feel like when we are working with the Ho-Chunk Nation Education Department and things are going well, we all commiserate around the attendance and we all struggle with how to find effective means to improve it. And when a very public racist act happens, our conversations with the Ho-Chunk Nation Education Department tend to fluctuate for a bit around if the school district wasn't so racist, our students would attend. I feel like that is a quick anger statement that happens when people are feeling attacked and are defensive. Most of the time, it is, we wish we could make it better. We've talked about joint communications. We've talked about well, during COVID, we started having joint facilitated Zoom meetings so that parents would hear my voice along with Ho-Chunk Nation Education Department voice. Like, we've tried a lot of different things over the years and we've not gotten to root cause. Please share your thoughts, because you have been part of that task force for many, many, many years.
I'm in agreement with Shelley in terms of my first reaction when something doesn't happen in my favor, and I would say that that's true for most of the community. When something, it's an internal snap 2 second. Is it because of my race? Is it because of my color? And that's a truism that's part of actually being human, being different, being marginalized. And so that particular piece does come up. And so yes, the attack is real. It becomes very real for a lot of people very quickly. And especially, it depends on the age. Is it somebody who we feel can be taught because they are still a student, or is it somebody in a position of responsibility? In which case we're like, we really got to work on this because this is a social justice matter that truly needs to be addressed across the board. So, you know, we have tons of different types of training, you know, community conversations, SEED, which is Seeking Educational Equity and Diversity, which is based on Peggy McIntosh's theory of unpacking the white privilege knapsack. You know, just when it comes down to it, if you're truly trying to address chronic absenteeism and tardiness, it has to come down to the conversation, just like in social services or human services, prevention. How do we prevent this from happening? How do we make a true cultural change of the Black River Falls culture, Black River Falls School District culture, that will support education, that's not going to have, and I know this is an impossibility, I've sat in your spot before, to basically have people say, I need my taxes lower. And because of that, then, you know, we got to adjust the mill rate, and we get into all these different conversations, and thank you for so many years, Jill, of brilliant advice. I have been so very pleased with your service, and I regret to see you retiring, but I understand it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, so in those conversations, yeah, it's tough to figure it out.
It's
The
never an
stick,
easy
the
fix.
carrot,
It's-
you know, in that part of the conversation too, it's like, well, you have to have your boundary. Yes, it would be wonderful if the children got enrichment in that K-8 arena, but that costs money, you know? Is that gonna be money that you're willing to put forward for that many students? So that they get in that habit. And I think part of that is figuring out, especially in the K-8 arena, why is it the parents aren't getting their kids to school on time? Why is it the parents are allowing this to happen, or they're missing instructional time, or they're, you know, just so many different diverse families, you know, because of the way the families are made up now, you know, custodial issues, or there's just so many things.
There's not likely
Placement
two
issues.
families who have the exact same root cause.
Yeah, exactly.
So hypothetically, for example, you could have a joint split custody where you have one incredibly responsible parent and one parent who just doesn't take their kid to school, and punishing the kid for that circumstance.
And we have
is
those
pointless.
We have those situations.
Yeah, so when I was in Minnesota,
Thank you very much.
when I was at the U, one of my professors was like, I'm gonna have you help me with this project. And I ended up starting a pilot project with him that actually is used now as Minnesota's best practices that's strictly targeted attendance. So I think the question we're asking is the wrong question, not how do you get your kid to school, because we didn't even talk to the kids. The school district would give us a list of hard to reach families whose kids don't show up, and we would go out into their houses and we would say to the parents, like, what do you want to learn? Not what do you have to learn, because these parents have failed school, they've had terrible experiences themselves, they didn't attend, like they've got satchels of like stuff going on with learning.
Some of them.
The ones we worked with. And so what we started to ask was different questions about like, well, what do you want to learn? And it was able to help them kind of get excited about learning again, and that helped them understand the importance of getting their kid to school. So we couldn't start with the kid, we had to start with the parent, because there was like that thing missing, and it was cultural specific, you know, if I want to do hair and makeup on the dead, you name it, I've heard it. And we would connect them with the community and be like, hey, can you help this person learn that? And we had 100% attendance for the first year of the pilot project. So, you know, it's now used in the state of Minnesota as best practice for attendance. So it can be done. I just think we're asking the wrong question. I think it needs to start with, how do we get parents excited about learning again? Like, why are they not, you know?
I don't know if we can create that word of language in the policy though. You know, and I think that's part of what we're talking about. So we've been talking about this a while already, and I think there's a lot of other topics to go through. So I'd like to see this on the agenda again in the future. I think it's a good discussion tonight. I don't think we have to decide anything. I think we have multiple months before we get into a new school year that we could potentially change policy to be different. So I guess, like, make a motion to move to the next topic, I guess.
I don't know how to attend that. I do like what we were saying earlier about having somebody from the school board attend this meeting, at least
hear what's being said, even if we aren't allowed to speak, just sit in the back? Whatever it might be.
We'll vote on that when it comes, when the ad hoc comes available. There'll be people on.
Well, so, there,
If you want to do that now, you
Yeah,
sure
we
can.
can do
Yeah,
that
because we have
now.
nothing to vote on with, if they're not making a recommendation.
well, there's no,
The date of that ad hoc hasn't come out.
So I'm gonna convene a committee. If this board wants to elect a representative to be a part of that committee, you are welcome to do that. Because I'm going to convene it per state statute, as I must, as the superintendent in the county seat. That is my role.
Can you let us know when that happens?
I can.
That's all I think we
Okay.
need to do today.
And is it really the board's preference that that person not be allowed to speak?
No,
That
I was
was
just,
weird.
I was just saying hypothetically.
Okay.
I think it's more important that we all like to speak. I mean, it's more important to hear what's
Got it.
going on.
nothing further than that, we'll move on. DPI special ed resolution, I think
Mrs.
Melody's
Lowry.
gonna speak to us.
I want to talk about the DPI, the second DPI complaint, under the lens of the lessons that we've learned from this. So some feedback that we got, and I will say that special ed, those of you that have been on the board this year with me, we've talked a little bit about it. It is a big beast. Like special ed is a lot, it encompasses a lot of different things, and then we've got staff turnover. So making sure that we're in compliance for everything is always an ongoing battle, and there's always lessons learned. And next year, we're going to be doing something called our PCSA cycle, so we reflect on our practices that we're using, and so there's always room to grow. From this complaint, we did get some things right, and I want to just start off by highlighting those. What we found is that in our IEPs, we include our positive behavior intervention support. So for instance, when a student has some behavioral needs, we're very good at including what supports we put in there in place in the classroom to help support the students in their behaviors. And so that was a celebration for us. Some areas to improve. Some of these are very technical, so when we're writing IEP goals, we learned that the metric that we're using, it has to be the same all the way through a goal, because sometimes there's a goal and then there's objectives underneath, and whatever we're using, it has to be aligned all the way through. And we can't change how we're measuring it. So if we say in 4 out of 5 opportunities, the student's gonna do blah, 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 we can't go and collect data and say on this assessment that they did this, because that would be a different metric. So however we say in the IEP that we're measuring it, we have to stick with it. And we also learned that when we're writing goals, they have to be very specific, they have to be measurable. I think teachers naturally like to include flowery language and cushion information, and for example, we can't say that the student is struggling to do this. We have to give concrete examples that the student can do this 0 out of 10 times or whatever that is. So that was a lesson for us. Another piece that we learned is that in an IEP meeting, what we put in that IEP is essentially law. We're committed to that. So if we say that we are using a communication sheet, we have to use it, we have to complete it fully. However, if all of a sudden a parent starts texting us or starts communicating through an app, we still are legally obligated to communicate via that communication sheet. So ultimately, students with IEPs are a little bit less flexible in the responses and instructional practices that teachers can use, because what we're putting down on paper, we're obligated to do. But we have to reconvene an IEP meeting, right? We have to come back together as a team and formally change those things if that practice needs to change. And so it's not necessarily locked in, but we can't change it without that. Go ahead.
Does that come from the request of the parent or from the district seeing that, hey, there's something that we're not quite doing now?
Both. Yep. So either the school district or the parent, the legal guardian, has the right to reconvene an IEP meeting at any time.
Okay.
So, and I would say it's encouraged. If we notice that something's not working or a student needs something additional, we encourage our team to reconvene that meeting. And the last thing that I just want to highlight is that
the last lesson that we learned is that we really need to that communication that happens between the gen ed teacher and the special ed teacher is really important. So I don't know how many of you have ever been in an IEP meeting or looked at an IEP, but there's always a part in there that all students, there's communication that happens. Usually it's something very minimal, like 20 minutes a week, communication between the special ed teacher and gen ed teacher. But that piece is really critically important to talk about what the teacher is doing in the classroom and making sure that those practices are reflected within the IEP. So if a gen ed teacher all of a sudden starts doing something and it's not in the IEP, we've got to know that and we have to include it if that's what that student needs. So for instance, if a teacher starts reducing the workload, if the teacher says, oh, you know, Casey, you're having a hard day today, why don't you just do the odd numbers? And that happens on a regular basis, then really we need to address what's happening in the IEP and how we're supporting them. So, any questions?
Yeah, I have a question. Page number 4.
Yeah.
Using page number 4, paragraph number 1. It says, you already addressed. It says the district did not properly implement it regarding providing parents with a daily communication sheet. And then you said it was a law to complete the daily communication sheet. I did not know if it was a law. So we are in the violation of the law.
If we say, so in an IEP, if we say that we're going to use this communication sheet and it's only partially filled out, then yes, we're in violation.
Yes, and this is the findings of DPI, not us. So they are politely saying, please fix the problems. So have you reached out to this parent who came 3 times begging to help our child? Have you reached out to her?
I have not, because they're no longer enrolled in our district.
They are.
They are not enrolled, as we know, they are not enrolled because we screwed up, and it says here.
And they received a copy of this too.
Oh, of course, this is their copy. So they pull out their kid because we did not fulfill the law. We went against the law. So I'm just wondering, are you planning to reach out to the parents and apologize written letter, and please bring your kid every hour count for your child, especially in terms of IEP. I've been teaching IEP for so very long, many years. So are you planning to send an apology letter to a mother?
We did not send a letter after the first complaint in which we were not found to be in default at all, and so no, we would not. The purpose of that letter is for the system to learn from from the DPI's review. She's sharing with you what we learned, and as the Director of Special Education, she will make sure that all of our staff know this information moving forward. That parent has chosen another pathway for their child's education, and we respect that. That parent knows that at any point in time, they can re-enter our system. All of those words have been made crystal clear.
Do you know why they have chosen a different path?
Yes.
Because we screwed up. They came 3 times here. They put it all over on my Facebook.
I think
that's they all over put on my Facebook. Public media people are calling me all across the world. What she is talking about. So I'm just saying it is we.
If the car
we did not follow the law, and I think so we sent an apology and request her to bring your child to in our school. We will do the best once again.
DPI has guidance on how we rectify any errors, and that's what school districts do, is we follow that guidance. So, and the guidance is if they choose to re-enroll, we make corrections to the IEP. But it's not about public shaming. It's not about shaming teachers or staff who were out sick or any of the things that happened. It's about fixing the system so those errors don't happen again.
Yes. We are not talking about apology means being shamed. I never heard of it. It means you are a great person. You know how to say sorry. It is the greatest thing, and that is a shameful thing, not in my dictionary as yet. So I would request to the a superintendent to reach out to the parent and request them to please bring your child, we will help you. It is a clear cut finding that we did break the law. Go ahead, sir.
I would not second that at all, but I would say that's a very selective reading of this document. As you said, that statement is on page 4 of that document. My reading of that document was a long list of everything the school district did right.
Yes.
It was finding after finding after finding that the school district did this in conversation with staff, they did this appropriately, they followed this performance, and then they got to the very end and said, this one thing, the paper sheets were not filled out correctly, and then there was an allusion to a staff member being sick or something. I just heard an allusion to parent also switching to a different mode of communication, perhaps, in some instances. And basically, this is not a clerical error that we're getting noted at the very end of a long document that says the school district did everything right.
So the communication sheet, it doesn't say that we break the law. She is saying we broke the law.
She's saying that what we have learned is that we need to stick exactly to the, I was going to say performance improvement plan. What's the official?
IEP.
The IEP. Stick exactly to the terminology of the IEP, even if this somewhat limits the freedom of the teacher to teach them the way that they feel would be best for the sake of the district not getting into a legal bind. It is better for them, whether it's better for the student or not, to stick to the letter of that document no matter what. And that is not a finding that the school district did anything particularly wrong. It's simply saying, you got to do this. And it says at the end that the parent who was on that document is invited, should they wish, to bring their student back, knowing full well that the school district has heard these issues and has moved to rectify them. This problem is solved as far as this document.
Do you care about that kid? You particularly?
No, not any more or less than any other kid.
He doesn't care about the children.
I don't know this kid.
You do not care about
You are
the children.
interrupting me.
So let's get back to the
You are
topic.
interrupting me.
You do not care about that child.
I do not care any more about one child than another child, with the exception of my
Gentlemen!
children. And you yelling at me
Alex!
during my talk.
Alex!
Do you want to say order?
Please, let's stick to the topic at hand. Okay? Are there any more questions for Melanie?
No.
All right, thank you. All right, next we'll move on to the 9 series, monthly expenditures.
They were in your packet. We don't have any questions. We need a motion to approve.
I make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Budget recommendations. So this was alluded to that we are say moving some money around, using some money differently. We got some good news here in relation to the health insurance.
Yep. So I'll start just talking through this sheet, and then Jill's going to share that supplemental. Just as a reminder, this is the most conservative approach to the 25-26 biennium budget. So I am on a scale of 0 to 100. I'm 75% confident our final picture is going to be better than this. But for now, this is the responsible way to budget because we don't know what that's going to look like. So I'll walk you through this sheet. Last month, we shared with you our preliminary items, and we had a 3% salary increase, and we heard feedback from the board that they were interested in looking at CPI and seeing if over the course of years we were above CPI. This year CPI came in at like a 2.1, I believe.
2.95.
2.95, sorry, I shouldn't say numbers when I'm tired. 2.95, and we looked at it, so a 4% is clearly above that. However, there was a year that CPI was 8% and we were at like 4%. When Jill averaged it out over the last 10, 15 years, we are very, very, very close to CPI with a 4% increase over the course of all those years. So we increased the compensation pool to 4%. I'm gonna just remind everyone, that doesn't mean every person would be getting a 4% increase. What that means is we create a pool of dollars. So like the teacher pool would get 4% onto that, and we would pay for each person's movement for 1 year of experience, and then the remaining funds would be put on each step of the scale. So it's not that every person just gets 4%, because we want them to keep moving down the scale in years of experience as well. We would like our bottom at 43.8, Marty? It's our bottom, 43.8. 43.8, thank you. 43.8 is our entry level teacher. We'd like that closer to 45 because that is what our regional counterparts are showing us, but we don't think we're gonna get quite all the way there. Anyway, so that 4% goes to moving every teacher down, and then it goes on each step of the scale. Same thing with our support staff. So we took all the support staff salaries, 4% increase into there, and then we determined what kind of increase could happen per hour to use up that pool of dollars. So that's what a 4% increase looks like. Then we look at 1B, that was our fantastic savings from health insurance. We are going with Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield, and we are going to realize a savings of $208,000 for the district, and each employee will realize a savings on the percentage of premium that they pay as well. Our new hire versus retiree, because the packet was generated quite some time ago, we don't have up-to-date numbers on there. With our 2 recent retirees, that savings is likely to increase. I would be shocked if we found a 35-year experienced teacher that was looking for a job, but maybe, I don't know, maybe. You already approved the building allocations and then the bus. You've heard us talk about buses for quite a while. Whenever we find any money or talk about money, the whole admin team now looks at Jill and says, is that another bus? Like, because buses aren't exciting to buy, but they are critical to buy. So this would be putting that second bus back in the budget so that each year there would be 2 buses already budgeted for. The HRA defined contribution catch-up, so just as a reminder, our teachers that are within 10 years of retirement, there was previous handbook language that said they receive $7,000 a year for 5 years upon age 55 and 20 years local, 20 years local service, 25 total. So if you, 25 years in education, 20 here, and you're age 55, you were retiring, you would get $7,000 a year for 5 years. That still exists, and we're not going to change that because people that have been here that long already were expecting that. That creates all of this liability, post-employment liability it's called, which means we have to do an actuarial study, all of these things. Instead, we've transitioned a few years ago to a defined contribution, which means every single year of active employment, we put money into an account in each employee's name so they can watch it growing, and there are different vesting schedules. So our teachers have always had that plan. Our support staff and support services have never had any health insurance retirement benefits. In our attempt to make those jobs more desirable and to reduce turnover, we created this defined contribution for all of those employee groups. So support staff and support services also have the defined contribution, but at a smaller dollar amount each year, kind of commensurate with the earnings that they make. If you are here for 10 years and you leave, you get 50% of what's in that account. If you're here 15 years, you get 75%. And if you are age 55 and are here for 20 years and you retire, you get 100% of what's in that account. So before, we were giving $7,000 a year for 5 years, very clearly $35,000. For people who were hired in most recent years, a teacher, $750 going in each year, by the time they reach age 55 and 20 years of service, that money could have grown to $50,000, and we will have contributed less than 35 because of the power of money over time. So it is giving the employees the opportunity at a larger benefit, at a lesser cost for us, and it's not this post-employment liability hanging out there for us. We are actively paying them while they are here, so they can see that account when they log into their thing and they can watch it grow. So that in our current budget, we have the money in for each person's annual payment, but when we made this transition, all those people who had been here less than that pool for 10 years of close to retirement, all these other people, we had to backfill their $750 for those 10 years that they'd already been here, or for our support staff, $250 a year for all the 30 years that they've been here. So this budget item here is taking some of the funds that we have, $58,000, and it's filling part of that hole. There's about, please tell me the size of the hole right now.
Several $100,000. I don't know exactly the numbers, but several $100,000.
So it is a bigger hole than this, but we thought while we had the opportunity, it was a good decision to start backfilling.
It helps us with those support staff people, especially the support staff that are retiring, right? So we'll be able to backfill them fully when they, upon retirement, so.
And remind me, how many years until the old system, if that's what we're calling it, is phased out?
32, 33 was the target year that we were.
Okay.
Just around the corner.
Yeah.
I have a question. Well, we'd like to talk about buses a lot, you know, and
Do we though? Or do we just find ourselves talking about them a lot?
wheels on the bus go round and round. Anyways, so you like to run them like in roughly 10 years, I believe. So I guess the question I have is, a 10-year-old bus, what does it cost to own, not counting tires and brakes and fuel and stuff like that?
I don't know that number offhand.
And what a $150,000 bus costs 10 years down the road, probably not much. That's the value of.
Well,
When
you'd
go
be
to sell
surprised, when we sell them on the Wisconsin surplus, we get sometimes more than I expected, like in the 20-some thousand dollars, or, and we're getting rid of them because they're not as roadworthy and safe when we do our inspections and stuff like that, but for somebody else who wants it for whatever purpose, you know, it works for them, but.
Sure.
No,
I'm
I
just
understand what
looking
you're
at
saying. The bus isn't necessarily 150, and trying to add back into the transportation budget a little bit for those buses that have dipped a little bit more than we used to. We used to budget 80, 90,000 for, and now they're over 100,000. So.
I was kind of looking at the need and like the cost, you know, versus the.
It's valid. We start replacing motors and everything else with them too, though, after, I mean, they have hundreds of thousands of miles on them and travel some rough
We can
roads.
certainly get some more information on, at 10 years, where are they failing in the inspection and how many miles are on them per average. We can certainly get that information.
Christy might have had that in that budget, or that replacement cycle, to know how many miles are on it, but the costs, I wouldn't know those offhand.
I'd be curious to see like what's out there on the used market too, and what type of mileage, and what's the cost of that type of, but I mean, just so you can, just as any consumer would typically do, whether they're gonna buy new or buy a used vehicle. I mean, just so we can see like why we're choosing to purchase new. You like maybe you get one new bus and you get one used bus every year. Sure. That type
Warranty
of
is certainly part of it.
Warranty is a big part of it.
And the ability to buy all the same type, so
Sure.
that our parts are interchangeable,
Yeah.
but
Yeah,
there's certainly.
the total cost of ownership type thing
Yep,
makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Yep, for sure. The increased sub-teacher pay from 120 to 140, as Jill shared in the notes, of 17 school districts that answered the survey, we were number 17. So one board member has asked us to reconsider the 140 and see if there's room for a little bit more movement there, that we could increase our sub-pay. Interestingly, that's the daily sub rate when someone comes in and subs for a day. We have a long-term sub rate, that is if you are working 20 consecutive days. In that pool of districts from our CISA, we are the highest for long-term pay and the lowest for short-term pay. So perhaps we need to do a little balancing in there, that our long-term maybe isn't exactly that far away from our daily pay, so that we can get more people in for the daily.
Jill, if we went to 145 instead of 140, I mean that puts us in. It looks like in the top 5%.
Yeah.
And it'll put us above what the average is for our conference.
Yeah.
It looks like maybe that's only like 5% more that we would have to put against, which isn't. You're not talking a lot of money.
We are not talking a lot,
I'd love to
and
push it to that if.
we probably could, especially with the 2 retirements that Shelley already talked about. We would have a little bit more to be able to do that.
It's just to consider that if once things come about. I mean, I'd like to see that be one of the top items to get us to 145 for substitutes.
How much would you have to drop the top end pay to make up that difference?
So the reason the top end is what it is it's a percent of the base pay. So we take our starting teacher salary and we divide it by the 189 teacher contract days, and that's the daily rate. Because when you're in a spot for more than 20 days, you're doing the lesson planning, you're doing the scoring, you're communicating with families, you're doing all the things. Whereas when you come in for a day, you typically don't do a lot of the follow-up communications. The stuff is planned for you. So there's a significance in job responsibility, but we certainly could set a rate for our consecutive that doesn't have to be quite that high, because I'm not sure we need to be number one.
So normally I would say, well, great, if we're being generous, we can attract people, but do people know going into it that they're gonna be doing a 20-day gig?
Most of the time, and principals would say I can get a long-term sub way easier than I can get a
So
series
that
of daily
still
subs.
does make us more appealing.
That does make sense, because you're paying the highest, so.
Yeah.
So that takes a
Well,
lot of stress off of you guys, why make it
Yeah,
work?
that was a technical question about, do people go in saying, I'll sub, and then find out 15 days later they're still subbing, or do they know walking in the door?
Most of the time, long-terms are pre-planned, so pregnancies, medical procedures, help me, Marty.
That's a lot.
Those are a lot of them.
Yeah.
And we want people to have babies, because we need more kids, just saying. Well, not me have more babies, but other people have more babies.
It's like the scholastic equivalent of the funeral home owner joke.
Growing from within.
Grandchildren have been very
Turn the camera.
Okay, moving on. Next one is the third grade teacher due to class size. So the board has seen it when we do our January, when we do our open enrollment seats, we have agreed upon class sizes 18 to 1 in 4K, and thank you, Jill. And so due to enrollment and no other reason, there would be a reduction because of resignations. That will not be a layoff. It will be saved through attrition, which is fantastic. Our Phoenix program, which is one of our longstanding alt-ed programs the last couple of years, that has been filled by somebody who's not a licensed teacher, and so we've had to rely solely on electronic curriculum. We would like the flexibility to have a teacher in that role so that we can use some electronic curriculum and some live teaching. And because that other person was in a unique role, the wages weren't typical aid, and so the addition would only be $7,000 to be able to replace that with an alt-ed teacher, which would create much more flexibility. Line 9 is that budget center that we were talking about, the virtual dual credit Wisconsin Virtual School, College Transfer Academy, Start College Now, and Early College Credit Program are all that alphabet soup down there. We always have more kids that want to participate in those, so we'd like to add $10,000 to that budget center. We are also going to ask when we have our business partnership luncheon, because so many of those are oriented towards very specific careers. We're going to ask if there's any of our business partners that want to sponsor students through some of these academies. They would not choose the student, but we're asking if we put like a recognition board up at the high school. Thanks for investing in our kids' futures, and businesses could get their logo and stuff up if they're willing to make some donations. That would allow more of our kids to graduate high school with a high school diploma and a post-secondary degree at the same time. So I'm excited to see how that goes. And the last one, our 4K. Now that this year we went to 4-day full day 4K for 4 days a week. Our class sizes next year are telling us that we need to add a section. So as the school year started, we ended up with one section that is at, our agreed upon rate is 18 to 1 in 4K. We have one section that was at 21, 22 a couple times this year. And so our enrollment projections right now look like we will need to add a fourth section to Forestry.
You think the full day is the major driver of that?
No, because this year we're down quite a bit, and so this is just bringing us back a little closer to where we normally are. We definitely have smaller class sizes coming in, again, for no other reason other than fewer kids being born. Those are our recommendations. You can see it brings us to Fund 10 budget balance of $690. It would be adjusted a little bit with those 2 new retirements, as well as changing the sub pay daily to $145. But either way, we are making a recommendation that would leave us in the black. I don't know if you want to see the other two budget projections before you approve this, or if you're ready to approve this now. Your preference?
I'll make a motion
Okay,
to approve.
Do you have a second?
I'd second.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed?
so to give them a glimpse into the future.
Yeah, just a note on a couple of things Shelley said. So one thing to note is in this budget, we built in about 31% reimbursement for special education aid. If that was to go to 40%, was a number that Shelley's heard, that would mean about $400,000 more in aid. So there would be less of a transfer from Fund 10 to help cover those special education costs, and Fund 27 with that kind of aid. That would be awesome.
So some of the financial advocacy is asking for 60% special ed reimbursement. What I'm hearing, the School Administrators Alliance has a lobbyist, Dee Pettick, and she said that she thinks that there's agreement on both sides of the aisle that movement on special ed reimbursement is probably the most likely because it benefits every single district. So the elected officials don't feel like they're picking winners and losers. They feel like everyone will benefit from increasing the reimbursement for special education. The downside on the state budget, I'm just going to quickly go into. So I don't know how much you follow the biennium budget and what happens in the governor's office. The last biennium, 2 years ago, the governor used his veto pen to ensure $325 per pupil increases for like 400 years because of his creative use of the veto pen. That's in the courts right now as to whether they're going to deem that to be legal or not legal. Not my issue at all, but the Republicans who were in control of the Joint Finance Committee who made that budget are mad and angry, and they don't want to make this budget cycle easy. So what we're hearing is that there's a general agreement that funding for schools should increase, and special ed seems to be the vehicle they're talking about, but they don't want anything to look too agreeable, and so they said, we're gonna slow this way down. It looks like it might be August before they decide. So that means $400,000, but we don't know till August. So we're in the people business. We need people in order to do our work. What's the biggest driver of achievement for students? Having fantastic people on your team working with them. We are not going to hire fantastic people in August, right? People with experience and skill sets are not likely to be jumping ship in August. So the timing is horrible for schools. So if we get $400,000, we're going to have to look at it's just going to be so messy because it's hard to hire people that late when you're talking about education. So I hope that they are just blustering and they're going to actually do it sooner, but it's possible we're in September before they approve that budget. And so this is conservative, and we are extremely confident that we will get this money, and we will very quickly have for you the list of what our next priorities are. But I'm not sure those next priorities are all going to be doable in August or September. Does that make sense? Like if we say we want more interventionists, or if we say we want more instructional coaches to give feedback and to support our teachers who are having challenges. An instructional coach is somebody who's already demonstrated success elsewhere. Those are not the people looking for jobs in August. So I'm very concerned about the timing of that.
So Shelley, wouldn't it have been more prudent for us to move something that's more like a bus to that later decision and put?
So a bus is a one-time purchase, a salary is ongoing.
True. I'll give you that.
It's hard to put reoccurring costs into one-time money.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that this is the right strategy, I'm just saying this is.
I think what Casey's saying is instead of a bus here, you put instructional coach here.
Yeah, and then if that extra shows,
Sure.
again, boom, there's your second
Yep.
bus. You know,
Yep.
and then you're already, you're ahead of yourself, and then you can start looking for that talent earlier.
Right.
Bus is still gonna be there come August.
If the budget gets
If the budget gets approved.
Yeah.
But if we're down a bus, we're
not down,
Yeah.
we're down one.
Right,
Not
right.
2 buses.
We've still bought our one new bus, but we've prioritized differently, so.
Oh, so this is the, okay.
I mean, we already
Got
approved it, so
I mean, we
it's
can
kinda hard to
reconsider.
go back, but
Yep,
it's
we can always
something-
reconsider. So the other scenario was.
Oh, the other scenario is, I'm gonna put a huge disclaimer on this, right? Because I don't exactly know how AEF is planning to increase the low revenue ceiling. They've talked about 12,325. Dr. Severson has sent you the emails about AEF, that Association for Equity and Funding. And so another $1,000 per pupil, definitely over $1 million. I mean, I can show you that. Please don't pay attention to all the years in the future in the forecast model. I don't want to be held to them. This is our current scenario. Here's 25-26 balanced budget. If we had a 3% increase in salaries for the following year, a really slight increase for health insurance, we would still be in a deficit mode. But again, there's a whole bunch of assumptions that go into those future 4 years. If we look at the AEF proposal at the 12,325 all coming to us in that first year, that lift of that revenue limit is high for us because we're such a low spending district. That's over $1 million more than right now that we're talking about.
And so I don't know if you guys looked at that map that I sent you that showed which schools were spending. There were different colors, right? We were one color because we're the low spending, and a lot of schools were that color, but you just had to look across the boundaries at some of our neighbors that are spending more than $2,000 per student. So $2,000 times 1,600 students. So when you guys keep talking about don't be so proud of being a low spender and expect the results of districts who invest that heavily, right? Over $2 million, think about the resources and the response rate that we could have with our students if you're spending that much more money. So
Not if they don't show up though.
you're correct. But could we hire somebody to go to their door? Yep, we probably could.
Or if the school was better, would they be more likely to show up?
So I had one question about the AEF piece.
Yes.
Is that something that our district has ever been approached about being a part of?
We are part of
We are
AEF.
part.
Yep, and it's a really low
Okay.
annual rate. It's less than $1,000 to
Okay.
belong to. It's
We
very
just don't have somebody on the board.
correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Yep.
Alright.
Yep. So most of the members are low spending districts
Yeah.
because we're the ones looking for additional lobbying and support. So John Geyer from Millsville has been very, very active in AEF for a lot of years.
Okay.
Yep.
That's all, I just wanted to give you that piece. We've been saying it's over $1 million. I costed it, and that's absolutely true, so. And it certainly would help us. With the revenue limit, it helps you forever, right? And every year thereafter. But they have to be willing to plug that hole too with equalization aid, so it's not all on the property tax, so.
So if I could just share, based off of the conversation, let me just throw this out there. So the staffing pieces are the ones that we need locked in sooner than later because there's a legal timeline that Marty needs to get the contracts out to people. And so that all needs to happen sooner. Would the board feel better if we went back and took off line 4, the buses, because that is a largest ticket item on there, and let me have some conversation with the admin about those levers towards student achievement and bring that piece back to the board, because the contract work could still happen in isolation of that piece. So I just wanted to say that we voted, but we are not locked in. This is,
Yeah, so we can amend that motion.
Yeah, I would be in favor of that, like bringing that to a vote at least for us to decide.
What do you mean by levers?
so when we talk about if we weren't a low spending district, what would we spend that money on? What are the greatest levers towards increasing student achievement? That would be our prioritized list. If we did more of this, if we spent more on this, we think it would have different outcomes for kids. And our team has been having a lot of conversation about that, but I don't want to speak for them, and I try very hard to be collaborative about the budget recommendations. So I'm just suggesting that perhaps we take that $150,000 bus expense off now. To Casey's point, my 75% confidence that we're going to get some more money. And I could be dead wrong, right? I'm not a gambler, so I shouldn't have said, right? Shouldn't have said that, but I'm just wanting to offer that opportunity.
When do most districts buy buses? In the summer?
Well, it depends. If you're putting specs out, they need 6 to 8 months, but Mid-State always has a bus kind of like ours,
lot like ours on their lot, so we can buy them off the lot as well. So we could wait and purchase those later if we needed to.
Well, I'd say if we're talking about trying to get outcomes and you guys think that you can come up with something that 150K can do that will have a noticeable outcome.
Noticeable by which granular level?
Yeah.
Like, we'll feel it, but will our state report card feel it?
Well, not for 5 years, maybe. I mean, that's the
Right.
thing. That's very hard to quantify.
Gotta get in motion.
So you're saying the special ed budget's going up?
I'm
No.
saying we
Possibly.
think the reimbursement rate from the state is going to create a pool of dollars that the district will be able to spend flexibly. So right
That's
now,
operations?
it could go from operations, yes. Yes.
So we would need less, we would spend less Fund 10 money on special education. We could spend it on something else if the revenue is increased in the special education.
That's why I was doing the
But we
picture,
could
right?
flip it if it got to August and it looked, we could get.
I'm
pull it
saying
out
if
of
we get told in August we have money, it's hard to hire great people in
Right.
August. That's my point. So if we pull the bus off now and we spend that on people now with the help of the team's input, then when we learn how much more we're getting in the state budget, it's a risk because they might say, you get nothing and like it. That could happen.
If the bus doesn't happen, what's the consequence?
Well, until our health insurance renewal, we didn't have the bus in there. So it's
That's something I
always,
could live without.
it goes on that referendum list.
Yep.
That's what happens.
I think that's fair.
Okay.
I'd rather
I
get
think-
people to the bus.
She was
I think-
very uncomfortable
I
with
think-
us leaving. I can see it in her
And
face.
it's need to be
She won't say it, but.
Need to be on the record.
Sorry, Joe.
I think that's a really good idea.
Does that mean, Shelley, if they increase, we could potentially increase the hourly rate for aides in the special education department? Because we see a lot of aides leaving from there.
More money means all of those things are possibilities. And if we believe that professional development and training works, the more we can retain our staff and invest in them, the stronger we are as well. Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so how do,
So you move to amend the previous motion.
Michaela made the initial motion. It would probably be
I
cool.
amend it,
So you move to amend a previous motion.
correct. I move to amend a previous motion.
yes.
And then, what is your amendment?
My
So-
amendment is that we take the bus out until in hopes or with the intention of using that for staffing purposes until we see what the future climate looks like in terms of student reimbursement. Is that okay?
That'll work.
I'll second that.
All right. So then, this is a simple majority vote, but is there any discussion on this item? Seeing none, all those in favor of the amendment?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion is amended.
I appreciate that flexibility. Good
Anything-
conversation.
Anything further on the budget recommendation? All right, next is first reading of the 1000 series, more gripping reading. Anything anyone wants to call out discussing those?
We read them at home, so we don't have to read them.
Right, no. So
We're not
first,
putting them all up.
no, first reading is just just terminology, I guess. So again, we'll have first and second reading. Everything is, so for starters, Shelley works with Neola to come up with her draft, and then all of them go through subcommittee where they get wordsmithed and we argue over semantics and all that fun stuff, and then it comes to you guys in a semi-rough draft format. The verbiage is correct, but the format is a little ugly, and then if there are changes, please get those questions to Shelley before this meeting. If there's anything that you want to change as far as like direction of policy, we'll discuss that here, and then otherwise, this is the time to make changes, I guess what I'm saying. And then next month, we will have a second reading of the 1000 series, which hopefully nothing has changed, right? And we approve those, so we do not need action on these, so if there is none, okay?
Yeah.
Meeting minutes, we have February's minutes before us. Any changes to those?
I make a motion to approve the February meeting minutes as written.
I'll second.
Right, further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. District admin report.
Sorry. Oh, it was just to reinforce for everyone that we moved our April board meeting date to the fourth Monday, so it is April 28th. And we will have that MOU completed, and so the Ho-Chunk Nation Education Department would like to host us. They have not yet determined whether we're gonna be at the tribal office building or at the D1 Community Center, but I will update you. We'll get the agenda out plenty early and posted publicly, and we'll, the sign at the high school always has our board meetings and the district website calendar. So if anyone is trying to find us, we'll make sure that they can in plenty of time. And I'm really excited because this MOU expired in 2014, and we've been trying for a very, 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 very long time to get it renewed. And as directors of education have changed, it has been put on the back burner. And this time we got on it probably 2 years ago, and we are finally seeing it through. So that's pretty exciting. That's all I have.
Any WSB or other? Conference or workshop attendance? School board connection opportunities? All right. Future agenda items, Casey already noted you want to talk about attendance.
Yeah, just get it on another, doesn't have to necessarily be next month,
And
we
we've,
can get it
yeah.
on another one.
Okay.
And yeah, I think we need to continue to talk about it, right? I mean, it's,
And referendum.
and referendum, yep.
Do we think there needs to be a referendum right away in April, or do we feel like we're good for a month?
I think we could wait a little bit since it's 2026 before we can
Yeah,
get
yeah.
this thing moving.
You don't want too much momentum and then.
I guess I'd say
like
unless
14
there's
months
something
before it needs to
really
be.
you wanna share that type of show, I mean, it'd be good to.
Interesting, the new budget's coming out too, I mean, before you,
Yeah.
you know,
Yep.
might totally change everything.
Yep, and something could happen with the Department of Education that changes funding priorities dramatically.
For sure. And I've got 25-26 budget, so we can give you the bus versus levers.
Jill votes bus.
Can we do
Question for dreams.
referendum trainings that are available though next, if you guys know of any, can you bring us to the?
Sure.
Even just online resources.
Yeah.
Shelley always uses.
Yep.
Like virtual.
For sure.
Anything further for that? All right. I move to adjourn to closed session pursuant to Wisconsin statutes 19.85 subpara 1 subpara C for the purpose of considering performance evaluation data of administrative personnel and employment of public employees. A second, please.
Second that.
This is a roll call vote. Marty, if you would.
Alex Woods,
Aye?
Yes.
Michaela Conlon View,
Here?
Yes or no, please.
yes. Casey Weiss,
Yes.
Jeanette Simonson,
Yes.
Nick Helsted,
Yes.
Iftikhar Memon,
Yes.
and Brad Dobbs.
Yes. All right, we're in closed session. We'll take a brief recess here. Use the restroom.
Thank you very much. I'd just like to know what.
He likes schools watchers and Skills USA.